I'd like to call the meeting of the Lowell City Council to order, please. Please rise for the council prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction to lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be good for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please join me in saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilor Dakota?
Here.
Councilor Elliott?
Here.
Councilor Martin?
Here.
Councilor Mendonça? Councilor Mercia?
Here.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Here.
Councilor Murphy? Councilor Broderick?
Here.
Councilor Caulfield?
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to begin tonight's meeting with a citation. This is actually, as my colleagues know, the fun part of the job being mayor, to recognize companies and people in the community that contribute to the community. And it's a pleasure for me this evening to present a citation to Madison Security Group Incorporated. And we have 2 representatives from Madison here this evening. We have Jack Knox, the regional sales manager, and we have Tim Grover, who's the executive vice president. It's my understanding the president, Len Barone, is actually out of town this evening, but does send his regrets and his thanks. We actually had a Chamber of Commerce sponsored ribbon cutting ceremony last Wednesday. Councilor Rita Mercia, Councilor Bud Caulfield, and myself were there. And it was very nice to recognize a company that's been in Lowell now for about 6 years. They employ over 100 people, and they decided to locate their corporate offices here in downtown at 31 to 37 Kirk Street. And I think my colleagues who were there would agree they did just a remarkable job renovating the space, and we thought that it would be good to have them here this evening to again publicly thank them for keeping Madison Security Group Incorporated here in downtown Lowell. So that being said, I do have a citation. Be it hereby known to all that the City of Lowell and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts hereby congratulates Madison Security Group Incorporated on the opening of its new corporate office located 3137 Kirk Street. The City of Lowell recognized the efforts of Madison Security Group Incorporated to build a strong community presence while establishing its position as a leader in the security industry. The entire City of Lowell extends its sincerest wishes to Madison Security Group Incorporated and its staff for continued success, given this actually 19th day of January 2010 by his honor the Mayor James L. Milanazzo. Congratulations.
On behalf of Madison Security, Tim Grover, Len Barone, the principals, I want to extend a sincerest thank you to the City Council, to Mayor Milanazzo, to City Manager Bernie Lynch and his staff. We cannot thank you enough. We're excited about our presence in the city, and we make a sincere pledge to help the city in any way we can to continue the renaissance that's now taking place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Tim. Thank you. The next order of business is to accept the minutes of the January 12th for acceptance. Motion by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Elliott, to accept the minutes and place on file. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Under unfinished business, in City Council order to discontinue as a public way and to abandon certain public interests, rights, and easements in a portion of Edward Street in the City of Lowell. As you recall, we had a public hearing last week. It was forwarded to the clerk's office for 7 days, and we'll be taking this up for action this evening. It's my understanding we do have people registered to speak. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with my colleagues, is to recognize the people who are registered to speak, and then we'll move into our discussion and debate.
Robert Maria?
You please state your
Good
name
evening.
and address, please. Thank
My
you.
name is Robert Maria. I live at 26 Montview Avenue in Lowell. I have lived in Lowell my entire life, and I own several businesses, several pieces of property and pay substantial taxes. I'm here tonight not to speak against Walgreens, the company, or the developer, or their lawyer. They're all very good, respectable people and respectable companies. I'm here to speak against their petition to locate a Walgreens at the location on Middlesex Street that we're talking about. As most of you know, this is a very, very dangerous intersection with very serious traffic problems. And before I go on, I just want to state, I don't doubt that all of you have the interest of Lowell in mind. You spend a lot of time doing what you're doing, and whether we agree or not, I do understand that all of us have Lowell in mind, and that's why we're here. But this intersection, at many times of the day, has traffic backed up past the S Bridge going east on Middlesex Street. It's a very time-consuming process to get through this. This is near a field where many of your own children play. I know 2 counselors here have said they have 2 children that play soccer. I know many people that have people that play soccer there. There are people that come from all over Lowell. But let me go into some other things. I think the whole process has been done backwards. And the reason I say that is the developer and the attorney are so astute and so good at this that their intentions are to confuse. This process should have been at first, do the council and the people of Lowell want a Walgreens located at this location? If we do, then let's take a vote. Do we want to sell them the land? I remember several months ago when it came up with the old council and the former councilors to sell them the land. It was like saying, this is a sure thing. Walgreens is going through, so let's conditionally sell them the land. Then the next step, the smart attorneys do, and I got to give them credit because 80% of the petitioners in Lowell hire Attorney Flood. That's how good he is, and that's why they hire him. The next step to confuse is, let's get a petition to relocate Edward Street. We haven't even agreed to to allow Walgreens yet. But now, this is exactly the point. Many of you, I'm sure, saw the January 4th meeting of the, the planning board. The chairman of the planning board, with all due respect, who's another great person, was so confused, these were his words. Attorney Flood, this has never come before us like this before. How do you want me to proceed? Now, Attorney Flood's the petitioner. Mr. Linehan's the chairman of the planning board. He's asking the petitioner what to do. So Mr. Flood's answer was, we gotta keep the ball rolling. So therefore, send it back to the council because their vote really isn't the final vote. Your vote on the planning board when it comes back is gonna be the final. So a couple of the members spoke up and said, but isn't that telling the council that the planning board is really in favor of this? And Mr. Linehan said, well, I don't know that I'm in favor yet, but you know what? Let's get it back to the council and see what happens there. And then, if it has to, it'll come back to us. Now, a couple of other things. I heard you, Rita, and believe me, I love you. You are everywhere. You are everywhere for everyone. But I heard you a few weeks ago make it sound like $350,000 that Walgreens is paying is going to be the savior of Lowell. Let me tell you, Rita, that $350,000 will be used up so fast you won't even know where it went. And what are we giving? We're giving Walgreens the right to make way more than $350,000 every year until they don't want to exist at that site anymore. Now, depriving Walgreens of going here is not depriving the Walgreen company of their livelihood, because what's going to happen, obviously, they're going to go and find a corner, which rightfully so. They have beautiful stores and good locations. And another thing, and I thank you counselors that took the time to listen to me when I called you this week. Another thing it was mentioned and compared to, well, we allowed a CVS on Bridge Street at the corner of Bridge Street and the VFW highway, so why shouldn't we allow Walgreens up in Middlesex Street? That's like comparing two opposites. The corner of Bridge Street and the VFW highway is like 6 times wider than the intersection up by the S Bridge. Another factor is, I haven't heard anyone talk about what if the state wants to widen the bridge in the future? Is Walgreens' wall going to be adjacent to the land that the state owns? And who knows how wide the bridge is supposed to be when it does get widened? This could possibly prevent us, not that I expect the state to widen the bridge tomorrow, but hopefully the city of Lowell should press for that bridge to be widened, because that's one of the biggest bottlenecks. I want to express that I spoke to one of the neighborhood activists, and one of their concerns were that neighbors, not only in the Highlands, but in other sections of the city, get worn out because they feel their voices are not being listened to. They feel that these experienced lawyers who know the planning board and all the other boards in and out and know the procedures so well are so experienced that the neighbors don't even have a chance. On one of the boards, if you watch their meetings, you'll see when they start, almost every variance that Mr. Flood, Attorney Flood requests, this is how they approach it. Attorney, how about if we put these couple of conditions on? Would you agree to it then? And naturally, he's going to agree to it because this
Mr.
was,
Maria, I'm going to have to ask you to stick with the issue at hand,
Okay.
please.
Well, I think that is part of the issue. I think part of the issue is the whole process was done wrong, and it was done in conjunction with the Department of Development and Planning, and I give them credit. They all do an excellent job. However, their job is to promote new business and for the city of Lowell. It's your job to decide where that business should be. I thank you all for listening, and I want to say if any of the members of the neighborhood are listening, stick together and we will defeat this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Maria.
Julie Grillakis.
Julie
Name and
Grillakis,
address, please.
56 Montview Ave, Lowell. I've been a resident of the Highlands all my life. I'm coming here, one, as a soccer mom. I've had my daughter in soccer for 8 years now, and I'm very concerned about the parking issue, for one. We all know that there's not enough parking, and that it's a very dangerous area. Number two, if there is going to be a paved area, much larger now, and Walgreens is going to be there, I'm worried about the drainage on the field. Right now, we do have a problem already with drainage, and that's a big concern for a lot of people right now. There is, I believe, 8 to 10 fields on that soccer field. People are coming from all areas of Lowell, all on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon. There's games from 8 o'clock till 4 o'clock. Every hour, there's 200 children going in and out of that field, and I'm very concerned about the traffic then. Right now, we only have a parking lot on Edward Street, and we're told that we can park over way at the Sterling Building. And then people who park on the streets or in front of the temple do get towed, and that's a big issue right now. My other concern is, I live in the Highlands. I will not go anywhere near Middlesex Street from 2:30 till 7 at night. If I have to go to Market Basket, I go to Chelmsford Street. That area is very dangerous, and I'm very concerned about the traffic issues. That's all, thank you.
Thank you.
Attorney Brenda Maley.
Thank you. My name is Brenda Maley. I'm a resident at 630 Princeton Boulevard, Unit Number 5. I'm also an attorney with an office in the city of Lowell at 9 Middlesex Street. I also am a lifelong resident of Lowell, and I have practiced my entire 27 years at 9 Middlesex Street in Lowell. I'm also president of the Brookside House Condominium Association. Brookside House condos consist of 4 buildings containing townhouse condominium units located at 604, 616, 620, and 630 Princeton Boulevard. I did a quick polling of the other residents and unit owners at Brookside House, and I have a petition here that I asked them to sign. I did it somewhat last minute, so I wasn't able to reach all of the unit owners, but it essentially says, "We, the undersigned residents and/or owners of condominium units at Brookside House condominiums located at 604, 616, 620, and 630 Princeton Boulevard, Lowell, Massachusetts, hereby express our opposition to the abandonment and relocation of Edward Street, and hereby express our opposition to the proposed Walgreens to be located at the intersection of Middlesex and Wood Streets." And there are 21 signatures here, and I'm certain with more time the opposition will increase and I'll be able to reach more. I can't more passionately or eloquently speak against this project than Councilor Caulfield did last meeting. I think his passion is clear. He understands the issue. Part of the reason he understands the issue so well is because he has to live with this daily, on a day-to-day basis. In addition, Mr. Maria also spoke eloquently on many other aspects of this case. And I just want to say to this council that unless you have all seen plans, and I don't know if you have or not, but by voting to abandon Edward Street and relocating it is essentially you're implicitly saying at this point in time that you will be approving Walgreens, because there would be no other reason but for Walgreens going in for Edward Street to be abandoned or relocated. So by your taking the position here today that you approve of that action being taken, that is the first step in the eventual approval of Walgreens. I agreed with what Mr. Maria said, that this is sort of a divide and conquer tactic. Essentially what happened is the first step was the sale of the land. I remember at those hearings, it may have been Councilor Mercier that said, "We're just agreeing to sell the land. We're not agreeing to have Walgreens go in." That's all that's before us today, and there will be a long process by which you'll have to go through planning board approval. I don't know if he'll have to go through Conservation Commission or Board of Appeals as well. But essentially, by selling them the land, you understood that there is no guarantee that Walgreens was going to go in. You merely agreed to sell them that land at, frankly, a very, very high price, and that's because Walgreens has the ability to do that at any cost. So by doing this, you're essentially saying, yes, we agree to the Walgreens proposal. And frankly, I don't know how any of you could agree to allow the Walgreens proposal to go in without really having a clear understanding of what the ultimate proposal is or the project is. If any of you are familiar with that area, and I suggest that if you haven't gone down there, between the hours of at least 4 and 7, potentially 2 and 7, and seeing what the condition of that traffic is, I would suggest that you're not doing your due diligence when making this decision. You have to go down there at the worst time of the day in order to see what the impact will be. In addition, I think you have to look at the surrounding area and the parcel of land itself. That parcel of land, as I understand it, because I haven't had the benefit of looking at any plans, that parcel of land consists of a vacant parcel that has greenery, shrubs, and trees at the base of the Rourke Bridge. It has the soccer fields in the back, and then there are a few smattering of single and two-family houses on Edward Street. What they're asking you to do is they're asking you to change the character of that parcel of land. They're not asking you to change the character of the neighborhood. We know the neighborhood is commercial. We know it's a mix of commercial. We know it's a mix of commercial and residential. But that particular parcel right now is vacant greenery with trees, bushes, and shrubs, and there's not much of that in that area. It's vastly different from the CVS. The CVS had a building on it. It was a redo of the building. There was already commercial property there. They put another commercial property there and improved it, frankly. And the character of that neighborhood is different. The other, I believe, Councilor Mercier last week compared it to the other retail establishments on Wood Street that are going in. Again, it's different. There were already retail establishments there, and there's buildings there. You're being asked to make a very non-dense parcel of land extremely dense in an already extremely dense neighborhood. Clearly, there was not a lot of planning going on when the market basket was put in. There was clearly not a lot of planning going on when the houses on Columbia and Cornell Street were being put in, because nobody would ever do that construction now. We know we like more open space. We know we like smaller buildings on larger pieces of land. This is the time for you to say, we're going to plan better. We're not going to allow the errors that were made in the past by putting houses where there's insufficient off-street parking, where there aren't any sidewalks. You all know that there are no sidewalks on Cornell and Columbia Street. You all know that you have houses sitting essentially on the entire lot of land that they're on. I think this is the time for you to say, we're going to do this better. We're going to do it better than our forefathers. We're going to consider the interests of the residents of that neighborhood, as well as the residents who live on the other side of the bridge and the other side of the river, because they have to deal with this on a daily basis. Those people that live on the other side of the river and in Drake-it, who get off Route 3, that have to go by Drum Hill, have to deal with that day in and day out when they're coming home from work at their jobs on Route 128 and in Boston. So I'm asking you to not make this decision today, to turn down the abandonment and relocation of Edward Street, because unless you do, you're essentially telling the residents of the city of Lowell that you value the interests of Walgreens in that location more than you value the interests of the neighborhood and the other people of the city of Lowell, and that you're implicitly agreeing to allow this Walgreens project to go in, having hardly any information. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Mealy.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to ask
Councilor
for,
Caulfield, yes.
like to ask for suspension of the rules. A neighbor, Diane Poole, has just arrived. She lives on Cornell Street, so I ask for suspension of the rules to allow this citizen to speak.
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Mercier. All those in favor of the suspension signify by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. Rules have been suspended.
Are there any other people registered?
No,
No.
just those two.
Okay, all right.
Good evening, council members. I'm sorry, I thought it started at 7 o'clock. Busy schedule, but I can't top what this woman has just said. You've heard me speak probably about 4 times already about this. I live at 24 Cornell Street, have lived there for over 20 years. I've seen the neighborhood change, and not necessarily for the better. And as she said, I mean, this is a total disregard for the neighborhood. It's what, the second worst intersection in the state of Massachusetts? I mean, this is just wrong, and it's simple. I understand that Lowell has fiscal responsibilities, but once this money is spent, all right, we're stuck with this. 24/7 Walgreens, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Okay, so I am definitely opposed to the moving of Edward Street, and definitely opposed to Walgreens. I mean, that's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you. While we're under suspension, Attorney Flood would like to be recognized.
I don't think we're here tonight to ask this council to approve Walgreens. We're here tonight to ask you to go forward with what you originally approved. You issued an RFP for this piece of property. It's zoned commercial. We responded to it. In our plan, it shows the existence of Edward Street. It's right in our plan. Based on that purchase and sale agreement, we proceeded further. We've spent considerable funds going forward, and it's really a planning board issue that's going to decide on the ultimate building of that development. We're asking just for a conditional abandonment of Edward Street. Nothing would be approved until the planning board acts on this. They would approve the site plan, they would approve a subdivision. When that's happened, yes, then the street would be abandoned. But until that time, nothing happens. We're just asking you to let us proceed based on our original agreement with the city. We signed a purchase and sale agreement. We said we want to proceed further, do our due diligence. Everyone knew it at this point in time. I don't know why someone is trying to pull the rug out from us at this point in time. As far as Mr. Maria is speaking, we have to do it this way because without control over that small piece, we can't proceed in front of the planning board. I think Aaron tried to point that out last week. With the abandonment, and we have the houses on both sides under control, then we control the middle so we can go forward. So all we're asking for, these people can come out and speak at the planning board. They can come out with the same issues. I think that's where traffic should be discussed, not at this council. But I think this council should honor their commitment to allow us to go forward based on the purchase and sale agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really, no, I don't want to get into a debate, Mr. Maria, really. I mean, again, if my council colleagues feel as though it's appropriate, no. Again, we'll move back to the regular agenda and we'll begin our discussion. So I'd like to recognize Council Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just respond to some of the comments. First, about the process. You know, our hands are tied somewhat by the process. This is a process laid out by state law, and, you know, the planning board regulations work in conjunction with this, so this is the way it has to be done. Now, I'm sympathetic to the fact that there's hearing after hearing sometimes for these development projects, and I've been on both sides. I've been on developer side, and I've been on neighborhood sides trying to stop these things. But the process is actually designed to lead to a better project. That's why we have it. That's why there are multiple layers of review. Now, I understand not every resident can make every hearing, and sometimes not even every board member can make every hearing, but that's the process laid out by state law. We've implemented certain things in our regulations with the hope that this leads to a better project. We've seen already that the planning department has issued a letter requiring certain traffic improvements. Now, we all know no one's going to solve or change the world over there. It is a heavily trafficked area, but there are going to be improvements made as part of this project. It's at least going to be designed that there'll be no worse harm. Until lanes are added to that bridge, it's going to continue to be a traffic problem in that area, but we have to deal with the situation we have. The council voted to put this property up for sale for a commercial use, voted overwhelmingly 8-1. And I think a lot's been made to minimize the tax benefit to the city, but there is the sale price and there is the ongoing tax revenue, which is something that this council, I think, needs to consider for all the residents of the city. Yes, I think we're sympathetic to neighbors and neighborhoods that have increased traffic volume, but we have that in a lot of neighborhoods in the city. You know, I grew up next to the Prince Spaghetti plant. I think all of us know how busily that area is, and to suggest that this council doesn't do its due diligence and go out, we don't know how bad the traffic is in that area at certain times of the day, in fact, at all times of the day, I think is disrespectful to the council. I think we're all well aware of what goes on in that neighborhood. So, I mean, the council made a decision earlier on to put this property up for sale. I think it was the right decision then. I have confidence that the planning board will hear the concerns of the residents and do what they can to mitigate the impact of this project. It's probably not going to be to everybody's satisfaction, maybe not to anybody's satisfaction who's close nearby the property, but that is the neighborhood that is. I mean, that's the neighborhood, the fight that we faced with the Prince Spaghetti plan. It happens the way the city developed. There were mill sites, and then there were neighborhoods that grew up around those sites where people walked to work. It's not the ideal plan that any of us would lay out today, but I think the planning department and the planning board have done a good job to date, and I think they'll continue to hold the developers' feet to the fire, and I think this project will ultimately be for the good of the city. There was some comments last week about we have a CVS, we have a Rite Aid, we don't need a Walgreens. Well, you know, Burger King wants to be where McDonald's is, and we don't get to dictate which businesses locate where they do. We have zoning in place, we have planning board regulations in place, we have traffic regulations in place, and if developers can meet those to the economic betterment of their company and to the city, then I think we're duty-bound to all the citizens to act in favor of that development. It's been the record of this council to be in favor of economic development when we can preserve neighborhoods where we can and minimize impacts where we can. So, you know, as far as, you know, the people being worn down, you know, Attorney Flood gets everything he wants. We had a project here last week, a rezoning on Willard Street that was vehemently opposed by the neighbors and ultimately withdrawn and turned down where Attorney Flood was the lawyer. So, yes, he does a good job for his clients, and I'm not here to defend him, but to somehow suggest that a certain lawyer is involved and so the project is automatically going to be approved, I don't think is true. And again, I don't think is a fair comment to the way this council conducts itself. So I think this is a project, in spite of the problems that it may present for the neighborhood, I'm confident that the planning board will do its best to address those problems. I think this is something that we should approve, and I would move for approval on this.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second? Second by Council Rita Mercia. Further discussion, Council Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the motion, I went through this traffic study, and it was done by a professional traffic engineer, Edwards and Kelsey, 343 Congress Street, Boston, Mass. Is the traffic engineer here tonight, Mr. Manager? Yes. Traffic engineer? No, not the city's traffic engineer.
Our traffic engineer is away this week, but Ann Barton is here from DPD as well as Adam Bakey.
First of all, I went through all the city records, and I could not find anywhere in the city of Lowell, Middlesex Avenue. That's the name that Edwards and Kelsey gave Middlesex Street. Middlesex Avenue. The longest street in the city of Lowell, Mr. Manager, as you well know, goes right into Vinyl Square. They didn't even know the name of the street. Some of their remarks: widen Middlesex Street westbound to provide 2 full lanes for optimize the traffic signal timing, approximately 250 feet east of the intersection. That's going to enable cars to go onto the Rourke Bridge. How are the cars going to get onto the Rourke Bridge when the Rourke Bridge will be full of traffic? Full of traffic. Then it also indicates install a stop sign on Columbia Street and Cornell Street. Mr. Manager, those signs have been there for years. They're missing. They're not doing us any favors. This report was done 2008. If the traffic engineer of the city knew those stop signs were missing, why weren't they put back up? There's a stop sign at the end of Cornell Street, Columbia Street, and Hadley Street. The signal that's hidden behind the lamp pole, I brought that up 3 years ago to address that. But now that we're going to build a drugstore there, they're going to take care of that. As far as I can see, the traffic study it's a joke. It's a joke. You heard these speakers come to the podium. Don't even go near Middlesex Street at 3 in the afternoon. And in all due respect to Attorney Flood, I want to rebut the feeling that someone's trying to pull the rug out from somebody here. These people have the right to come to that podium and speak. The people I represent. And the neighborhood that they live in. Mr. Manager, I took the liberty to do some investigating. This is a report from the Northern Middlesex government. The top 100 high crash intersections in this region. In this region. Number 1, out of 200, the VFW highway at Bridge Street. It was 188 crashes there over 3 years. Route 110, Chancellor Street and Plain Street, 105 crashes. And the Wood Street, Middlesex Street, 138 crashes. Isn't it odd that all those 3 intersections will have a drugstore 15,000 square feet? Isn't that odd? The one disadvantage here, Mr. Manager, is there's only one way in to the Walgreens store on Middlesex Street, and there's only one way out. Anyone coming through the intersection that wants to take a left into that drugstore will create a nightmare. And anyone who wants to come out of that drugstore to get into traffic will create the same thing. Here's another article here. The average intersection with signalized traffic lights. I want my colleagues to hear this. Crashes per million entering intersections. You say, well, 1 million cars. That's an awful lot of cars. In 1 week, 200,000 cars go through the Wood Street, Middlesex Street intersection. So, over the course of a month, you have over 1 million cars. The average accident, Mr. Manager, is 0.78. At Middlesex Street and Wood Street, it's doubled. It's 1.56, and it's right in this traffic report. It's right in here. I indicated last Tuesday that I am pro-business, and so isn't this council. But you have to use common sense. Common sense. Would you put a gas station there? Would you put a tire store there? I went over to the CVS drugstore, Mr. Manager, and I asked the manager, how many people do you serve over the course of a week? He says 11,000 to 12,000 people. Now, Walgreens is going to build a drugstore, 1/3 of an acre, and there's no doubt in my mind they'll be open 24 hours a day, and they're going to be serving thousands of people as well. And good luck to them, but not at that spot, not at that location. And if this council disagrees on abandoning Edward Street, they could still build a drugstore, but they'd have to take other property, which would be more costly. So the easy way out, Mr. Manager, have the council abandon the street and we'll start building. 5 members of the Lowell Planning Board, 5. 2 of them said, I'm not voting for this because it's not right. Steve Gendron and Joel Fischette stood tall. Let this council do the same thing. Stand tall.
Thank you, Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Pat Murphy.
Is the traffic engineer available for questioning? Because we didn't get a chance, we just received the, okay, could I ask?
Your name and address or affiliation, please?
Certainly. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Manager. For the record, my name is Jeffrey Dirk. I'm a vice president with Vanessa & Associates, a registered professional engineer and a certified professional traffic operations engineer.
Thank you.
Office is located in Andover, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
The study, it says, was conducted in March of 2007 and uses data from a 3-year period of 2003 to 2005 for accident data. Is there, there's data available on Mass Highway's website from 2005 to 2007,
That's correct.
which shows a significant increase of, I think, 74%, up to 134 accidents or so. Do you have more numbers beyond that to see if your projections for the increased traffic are on the mark or somewhat accurate?
Two pieces to it. What you're mentioning is the motor vehicle crash information. At the time that the report was prepared, the data through 2005, what was available at that time. It has since been updated through 2007. I think the key thing in looking at the crash data is that, as was mentioned, it exceeds the crash rate by a factor of 2. And I don't think that that's changed. The crash rates in terms of number of crashes per million vehicles going through the intersection has also gone up on average throughout the state. But the fact that this intersection exceeds the crash rate is still significant. One of the key pieces in looking at anything going in at either that parcel of land or anywhere in the city, or just looking at that intersection in particular, is to understand what's going on in terms of the crashes. That was one of the things that the city asked us to do through your city traffic engineer, was to actually look at each and every accident that happens at that intersection. What are the causes? Where does it happen? And then to take that further and look at what can be done to address the crashes that are there in terms of specific improvements. All of the improvements that were mentioned in terms of widening roadways, those were things that were brought to bear in looking at what the recommendations were for that intersection. There's significant improvements that are proposed at that location to address what those crash trends were. Those improvements that are proposed as a part of the Walgreens project would still address the most recent set of crash data that's happening there. There's a large number of accidents that happen. We've looked at where they happen and why they've taken place, and we've developed solutions, tried and true traffic engineering solutions, to address the conflicts that are happening at the intersection. That's separate from capacity. There is issues on the backups that were mentioned. There's also safety things. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we've got a safe intersection, and we've proposed improvements to address those.
I guess the question would be, I mean, is it reasonable to assume that where you have an intersection with such a high volume of traffic,
Correct.
that when you increase that traffic on the margins, that it's not necessarily a linear correlation, that in fact, you may see more of a parabola when you've reached a certain point. And then when you add more on that margin, that you could possibly see, more of a geometric increase in the accidents.
There's not a direct linear relationship in terms of the volume of traffic that's going through an intersection and the number of crashes that happen. You can find an intersection that has very low traffic going through there and could have a high crash rate because it's all normalized per million vehicles going through the intersection. So the fact that we're adding traffic to the intersection does not directly mean that you're going to see a proportionate increase in the number of accidents that happen. I think the important thing here is that there has to be improvements at that intersection, and those improvements have to address two things. They have to address safety first. The second thing that I think was mentioned is that at a minimum, you want to have a no-harm condition, so that if you're adding traffic, that you do add sufficient capacity so that things don't get worse. And that's the minimum that we want to achieve at that intersection. And through your planning department and through your traffic engineer, we believe we've achieved both goals at that location. So you're not just going to get added traffic and no improvements. You're going to get capacity improvements and significant safety improvements as well.
I understand that an increase in the traffic itself doesn't necessarily mean an increase in the accidents. But you are, in fact, changing around. You're adding 2 turns. The mitigation measure there, adding the triangle so that you have the 2 right turns there makes sense, and I think that will help. But you are still adding those 2 turns, and you're moving Edward Street. That still has that left turn, but at an increased volume again. So you're creating almost 3 more points for an accident. It's not necessarily that you just have that increase in traffic, but you also have those 3 points, I think, that could potentially lead to accidents. Has that been analyzed? I mean, that wasn't really addressed in the report, but has that been analyzed?
It has. It's direct. It's analyzed in the report more of an indirect way. In terms of looking at the safety of new access points, we do look at the conflicts that happen. And one of the things that you had mentioned, the island that is proposed when you're looking at the proposal for Walgreens and the driveway, in terms of the driveway that's closest to the intersection, is right in, right out, which is the safest type of intersection that you can create in terms of conflicts, because it's more merging and diverging versus left turns. So that was specifically put in place to address potential for safety at that location. The second thing is sight lines. We made sure that we had adequate lines of sight at those intersections for motorists to be able to see someone that was approaching them and determine whether it was safe to enter and exit. Same thing with someone on Middlesex Street. Can they see the driver and safely react? So that was taken into account. I think the key thing in terms of safety, in terms of what we're asking to be done tonight, irrespective of what you were to put on that parcel or what happens on that corner there, the best thing is to move the intersection, the Edward Street intersection, as far away from Wood Street as possible. And that's what is being done here. We're actually putting it at the extreme end of the property that's going to be created here. That is significant in that you're taking that conflict that you had mentioned and you're moving it as far away from that signalized intersection as possible. That's a good thing. Independent of anything that happens on that corner, that is a good planning thing to do anyways, because the traffic exiting from Edward Street relating to the soccer activities in that field, it's further away from the intersection. It's going to enter the traffic stream at the back of any queuing that was happening there. Those are all good things. And again, that would be something that would be recommended independent of what would happen on that parcel. And I think that's what we're asking to be focused in on tonight, is to move that intersection further away.
So you believe that the movement of that intersection would actually offset the increased volume that will happen on Edward Street?
I think it creates a safer condition for the flow of traffic along Middlesex Street. In particular, even if you just looked at it in terms of standpoint of access into the playing fields that are there, the traffic that happens just relating to soccer at that location there, if you get those turning movements, if they're going to happen, and you get them further away from the turning movements that are happening at the Wood Street intersection, that's a good thing. That benefits the flow of traffic along the street itself. It benefits the flow of traffic at the intersection, and it makes a safer situation for anyone that's using Edward Street.
But does that, do those changes actually, I mean, there's no real data in the report itself as to whether you would see an increase in accidents because of those 3 points. I understand that there are a number of mitigation measures there that would make some reduction in accidents, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a reduction in total accidents, or that you even have the status quo in terms of accidents. What have you gathered in terms of whether or not there'll be an increase?
Basically, what we do is we make sure that when we design or make a recommendation for a new intersection, that it meets all of the standards to function in a safe manner. We would not offer recommendations or propose a location of a new driveway or a new intersection that wouldn't meet city standards, state standards, or federal standards that would say that if you design it appropriately, If there's adequate sight lines, if there's adequate turning lanes at an intersection, then there's no reason to say that it would not be considered a safe intersection. We wouldn't design an intersection that we would come before you and say it's going to create additional crashes or accidents at a location. We design it so that it meets those standards, and those standards are based on safety.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions. You can sit down. That's fine. This, I'm going to say it again, is one of those very difficult votes. I know that there are those that think it's easy. It's not easy. It's not easy for me when I go against the wishes of the neighborhood, because I sympathize with them. I sympathize with what they're going through. I sympathize with my daughter, who lives in the immediate area, who on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday takes her second job and has to be to work across that Rock Bridge River to a major restaurant in Pawtucketville and Pawtucket Boulevard. So yes, I sympathize not only with the neighbors, I sympathize with what the vote I'm going to take, and I'm not going to deny anything. The vote that I'm taking tonight will add a little bit closer to the project at hand. I'm not going to deny that. It's going to happen. It'll be a little bit easier to make the presentation if we tonight support this. I'm not going to deny that. I know that. I know that my daughter's going to have a hard time going over the bridge, but I'm hoping that when all is clear, it'll be a little bit easier. When you stop and think of the projects within the city and Lowe's on Chelmsford Street and Industrial Avenue over there, zoned for that type of business, we could have done nothing. We could have let it stay vacant, or we could have stepped up to the plate. We heard from neighbors there, over there along Chelmsford Street, that were highly opposed to it, completely opposed to it. And yet, we knew that. We supported Lowe's, the mitigation of the traffic reconfiguration of the lights. The city couldn't afford that. I don't think we could afford the study, the presentation of widening the street at Chelmsford and Chelmsford Street and Stevens Street to make it a better fit, a better flow of traffic, to go further down Stevens Street to Parker and see that they put lights there finally after how many years that we could never get it done as a city, but a company came in and offered that mitigation, and it helped us. It was good for us, and maybe it will alleviate all the traffic accidents that might have taken place. And why do we have to have people like Jim Flood, who incidentally, the meeting that my favorite guy, Mr. Maria, and I love you too, I think the world of you, but the fact remains that I was at that meeting, and Mr. Flood lost to 16 people that said, no, we're not going to support the zoning change. And he walked out of the room as a loser, but as a gentleman. But I was there, and I saw it, and I thank you for coming back the following Tuesday and withdrawing it from the agenda. And the neighbors are happy about that, but we can't win them all. And I'm not saying we're winning or losing. I'm saying that the key here is, and Councilor Martin said it, we go to the different boards, the planning board, the zoning board, the conservation board. It's another stopgap to, as he said, the process is going to different boards is to lead to a better project, and it will. It will. I firmly believe that it will. I don't think there's anybody in this city that wants to, oh, let's stick it to these residents. I don't think we want to do that. Absolutely not. But it's to enhance the concerns of neighbors and improve and correct and make things better by going to each board. Because now you have a chance to hold that developer's feet to the fire and say, we want this, we want that. And I'm going to tell you what I want. There's a business on that particular street that said that was made to put shrubbery all around their property. And over the years, the shrubbery fell in disrepair, and now people are actually driving over the shrubbery to get onto their little side streets. That's not right. And I brought it up privately to see if the owner would put the shrubbery back so that they're not going on Cornell Street or whatever that business is that's on the corner. That wasn't an exit for cars to go into their side street. They were supposed to go out of the exit, but because the disrepair of the shrubbery, I mean, maybe it's this project that's going to take place that's going to hold the different businesses and do the right thing that was put there some time ago. Having said that, I sympathize with them, but I am supporting it, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I have to look at the overall picture. The overall picture, not what's best for the neighbors, not what's best for Mr. Flood, the king of all the zoning changes and stuff, but what's best for the overall neighborhood, the city itself. And you know what's best for the city? That we're talking about job creation, that we're talking about expanding the commercial tax base, that we're talking about improving and adding on to the parking at the soccer field. And I firmly believe the neighbors have a right now through these boards to hold their word accountable and their feet to the fire to make these things happen. You have an obligation, if you're going to impact the neighborhood, to make it right, to do the project right, and to look over at the things that were supposed to be done years ago that has fallen by the wayside, like hold that business accountable to redo the shrubbery so that people aren't crossing over and going into their neighborhood. Maybe we can address all the problems and make that a better section. And maybe my daughter won't be upset that she's crossing over a bridge and taking another 20 minutes because her mother supported this project for the good of the whole city. And that's where I stand. Thank you.
Councilor Elliott? Oh, I'm sorry.
I think Councilor Dakota.
Councilor Dakota.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually would like to speak to the traffic engineer again, if I could. Good evening. Thank you for coming. I'm not sure if you have this document in front of you here, the April 2007 document, but I just have a question on the diagrams. Do you have this available?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm looking at figure 3 and figure 6.
Okay.
So figure 3 is the projected 2012 traffic rates with no build, so assuming that this project does not go through.
That's correct.
Okay. And then figure 6 is 2012, assuming that the project does go through, and these are the traffic rates. I was wondering if you could explain to me why the numbers decrease with the construction of the project.
In some areas, they decrease.
In some, they do.
And the reason for that, and it actually is a very good question, and it goes back to some of the discussion about why certain businesses locate along busy roadways. The reason for that is because they draw from the adjacent traffic stream. For just as an example, if you're going to work and you needed to pick up a prescription, it might be something that you would phone in your prescription, say to Walgreens, from work, and then you're going to pick it up on your way home. So you're already driving by that store. You're on Middlesex Street, you're going home, you're going by the store, and you're going to pick up that prescription on your way home. So what happens is instead of you continuing through, you become a left-hand turn, let's say if you're heading towards the downtown area to go into the site at Edward Street. So you see a subtraction or a reduction in a through movement, but an add in a left turn movement. So that's why you see the reduction. That's why certain businesses, such as pharmacies, such as gas stations, trips of convenience, want to be at busy locations because they draw from the traffic stream.
Okay. Thank you. May I ask you one follow-up question? Specifically, other than traffic, what contributes to crashes at an intersection?
A lot of things.
Other than volume.
Right. Some of the things that the council, I think the last time I was here, addressed very well. Driver inattentiveness. Text messaging is, as you heard, that's the latest thing, but there's a lot of things. But what you do find, and what we did find as we look at the crashes, there's a lot of single vehicle crashes that happen at that intersection. Okay. And they are because drivers are not paying attention as they're going through, changing the radio, talking on the cell phone, and text messaging. Those are really found to be significant contributors to crashes, even just rear-end accidents. You look down at a text message or you pick up the phone, and the next thing you know, especially when you've got locations with lots of traffic, you're right on top of that vehicle. We find that at a lot of intersections, not just this location, but elsewhere. And so
your improvements won't change those issues at all?
What they do is they sort out traffic at intersections. So there is some advantage to creating turn lanes, things like that, to move traffic, get traffic into the right lanes. But no, there's nothing you're going to do other than try to get either bans or devices that don't allow someone to operate certain equipment as the vehicle's moving. That's going to be the most effective way to deal with that.
Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In December of '08, the council did vote to send us out to RFP, and I was one of those votes. And then March of this year, the recommendation came in for the sale to go to Walgreens, Kaufman Realty, and I was one of those votes. And I've struggled with this from day one, knowing that it's good for the city because it is additional revenue, not just from the sale, but the taxes that we'll generate later. And on the other hand, I go over that bridge every single day, 7 days a week. When I did vote in March to move this forward to the planning board, which it did go to the planning board. My presumption was that it was going to go to the planning board, and many of the issues that we're sitting here discussing tonight and last week of traffic and the impact that this is going to have in the neighborhood and the entrance, the exits, the number two. I thought all of these issues, which apparently they will be after the fact. I agree with Mr. Maria. It seems like we're putting the cart before the horse, and these issues should be addressed before coming to the city council. And I did look at the traffic study, and I know it is a little bit outdated, and Councilor Caulfield brought updated data. It's a terribly dangerous intersection, so you have to ask yourself, what is this project going to do to that neighborhood? It certainly is not going to make it any better, in my opinion. But just one question to clarify before to the traffic engineer. In this report, it says an additional 980 weekly daily trips. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's a two-way number, so it's about 400, a little over 450 vehicles in and then 450 out. That's two-way traffic, yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I just want to clarify. So one way or the other, there's still an additional 400 plus cars based on this data. And there is also a growth factor for, presumably there'll be additional customers, additional traffic. So I don't know how we can move forward on this, knowing that it's a congested intersection. There's significant crash data or accident data to say that, it's a bad intersection to begin with, and we're going to add another business that's going to bring more vehicles and make the intersection worse. Residents do have a right, and we have to listen at the end of the day, listen to the people that live in that neighborhood, and people that live on the other side of the river that have to deal with it on a daily basis. It's a daily basis. This is going to be a 24-hour drive-through, so whether it's peak hours or not peak hours, there's going to be more vehicles at that intersection. So I'm not going to support this tonight. I think that we can do better. Maybe it has to go back to the drawing board. Maybe, the planning board voted 3-2. That doesn't tell me, in my opinion, that this plan is the best for that neighborhood. I'm not sure you did due diligence, Mr. Flood, if this went through on a 3-2 vote. Maybe you do. Maybe you feel that the process is better this way. But in all good conscience, before we move this forward, I think many, if not most of these issues should be mitigated beforehand. Why make a mistake and then try to correct it later? That's my point. So I spoke last week. I know I did vote to move this forward. Maybe I'm being, I'm not being altruistic. Maybe I should go through and just stick with my vote, but I'd rather change my vote. I'd rather say maybe I made a mistake to vote in this before knowing that all of the issues were going to be settled, if you can even mitigate any problems at this intersection. Maybe I'll be the first person to say that I made a mistake, but I don't want to make two mistakes. And I want to support the neighborhood. I want to support the people of Pawtuckaville that have taken the time to call me and email me and And just those are my thoughts. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have listened, and I appreciate everybody coming out this evening. And I supported this in the prior steps. And just for the record, the information we have before us is the same information we had before. The report Councilor Caulfield read from was from NEMCOG from 2004, 2006 data. So it's not necessarily new data. Just to be clear on that. But there's been a lot of concern about the process, and it does seem to some people as if it's backwards. But the reality is, as Councilor Martin mentioned, this is the way the process is. It's state law. This is what we're stuck with, for lack of a better word. And clearly, we have to take a vote tonight whether or not to send this forward and then put it back in the hands of the proper jurisdiction, which is the planning board, to determine what is proper mitigation, what calming effects can be done on the side streets for cut-through traffic. The fact that two members, Jerry Frechette and Stephen Gendron, who I respect, have a tremendous amount of respect for, did not support this, tells you that there are some issues that need to be addressed. And to me, that sends a signal to me that the planning board is going to do their job. This is not going to be a slam dunk for Attorney Flood or anybody else. These people are going to be, Walgreens and whoever develops here is going to be held accountable. I actually have some comfort in that. I served on the planning board for years with several of the members. I know they're going to do the best they can. What we have before us is a traffic study and a recommendation from our traffic engineer. I'm not a traffic engineer. I read through this. I tried to make as much sense as I could of it. And common sense, as it was mentioned earlier, sometimes has multi-levels, okay? And it may sound to some like it doesn't make sense to add some traffic to an already very busy intersection. But when you take into account the mitigating factors that are going to be put in place to make this intersection a better intersection, it's maybe the light goes on and it does make a little more sense that the intersection is going to be made better. They're going to move the street back. Anybody that's been over there knows what the traffic is like. And I really would question how many people are going to drive in a half-an-hour traffic to go to Walgreens to pick up cough drops or deodorant. I don't think we're going to see the type of volume and traffic that people are afraid of. But that's a personal opinion. And I'm not here to vote on my personal opinions or beliefs. What I think my charge is to take the information that I'm given by city departments, not a traffic engineer hired by the developer, but to take what our city engineer, traffic engineer has told us, the list of the mitigation and the improvements that are going to be made, and I think it's clear that improvements that the city cannot afford to do, these improvements will not be done. This is going to stay like it is now. It'll stay the second most dangerous intersection. It'll stay as busy as it is and maybe get more busy. And the other reality is a council and as a city, we redid our zoning, I think, twice in the last 5 years. Councilor Martin, I believe, was the chair of the zoning subcommittee before I came on board. And we have rezoned most of Lowell. And we took, as a city and as a planning and development, we took a look at and we voted on how we want the city to be broken down and what we think is a good plan in a good mix. And we tried to separate commercial, residential, industrial into some type of to make sense of it. And this is what we left. This is commercially zoned. The fact that it has trees or bushes or flowers or plants on it now does not mean that that's the way it stays. The reality is it's commercially zoned. We're not changing the zoning. We're moving a street. Moving that street is going to make that particular area safer. Now, the other reality that we ought to consider as a body is that if we vote this down and Walgreens goes away, the city, in my opinion, should still look at sending this out for an RFP. We do have a duty to the rest of the city to get these things on the tax rolls. We've talked about it. I think everybody supported that. And the reality is, if this goes back out, somebody else might come in with a different plan that's not going to require our approval. And it's not going to require any improvements. And we could see a small strip mall in there. We could see any number of different types of projects that can go in as a matter of right. And that, in my eyes, would be a much worse plan or a much worse result than what we could be looking at here. And I say could because I think the key here is that we still have to send it back to the body with the proper jurisdiction, which is the planning board. All of these things that are outlined, okay, all these traffic improvements that are going to be included, all right, are all going to be subject to planning board approval. And again, we have two members that I know are going to hold them to task on this. And I know the other three personally, and I believe they're going to listen to the neighbors, who I encourage, as I did last week, to stick to the process to come up with the best result possible and push this thing. And I think the planning board is going to do that. It's going to hold them accountable. This is conditional upon the planning board review and approval, which means they have to meet all this criteria. And I think that looking at a whole, what may at first blush seem to not make a whole lot of sense, when you dig into it and listen to the experts, I think it can work. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take the input from the neighbors, and it's going to take the cooperation of the city and the boards, and we're going to have to take this developer to task and make this the best project we can. But to say because it's busy that we shouldn't do anything there, we shouldn't allow anything. There are also citizens that live there, that have their property, their homes zoned commercial, that should be allowed to sell them, regardless of whether it's to Walgreens for this development. But essentially, the statement the council may be making is that no development over there is going to be acceptable because it's too busy. Then if that's the case, then we ought to go back to the zoning board, send this back to the zoning board at some point and turn this into a park or something different, because it doesn't make sense in terms of what it's zoned for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Mendonça?
Yes. I've tried to find out more about these parcels and what they're meant to be. They are, in fact, zoned for retail usage, even though they're being used for residential at the moment. I also went and looked at the comprehensive master plan, and in that area of Middlesex Street, it calls for development of a retail nature, and that it explains that you want to put retail developments in high-traffic areas at intersections or near intersections that have a lot of traffic flow and as close to the major arteries as possible, or highways. And so this fits in that sense. Now, if a resident of Edward Street were against this and didn't want to sell the property and allow this to go forth, then that would be an easy vote for me. I would vote no. There's a resident on that street that likes things the way they are. But to the best of my knowledge, there's no one on Edward Street that's against this project. They've all signed on to it, even though they're being paid for their property as a part of it, or have improvements being made to their property. If we don't proceed with this, and it is a conditional abandonment that allows them to go to the planning board and see what plan comes out of it. Hopefully there would be traffic improvements. It wouldn't solve the issues at that intersection, because we all know the only thing that's ever going to solve those is much wider. We need a new bridge across that river, and we need a roadway that on both sides of the river can handle the traffic and go all the way to the highway up at Drum Hill somehow. So that all needs to be done. But I would say that if we don't allow them to at least consider planning for this, that we as a city will be a long time before we can make improvements at that intersection. So it will not get better. So I would like to at least proceed with a conditional abandonment and see what the planning board can do with it. Can there be improvements? I would support the neighbors from the other side of Middlesex Street in getting all the conditions that they feel are needed in order to address their concerns. We'll certainly work through that. And then if it still can't be done, I'm sure the planning board will kill the project. Otherwise, let's see what happens. I think it can be improved. Now, I remember over in Pawtucketville when we had the big issue with McDonald's going at the corner of Mammoth Road. It was an abandoned property at the time, and we made the same arguments. There was too much traffic. It could never work. But I've lived through it. I've seen it go in. I've seen the improvements to the traffic that they made. And yes, it's still a busy intersection, but those improvements make it a lot easier at that intersection with the creation of left turn lanes that were not there before. And they did make some intelligent choices into how to access the property so that it didn't back up traffic in either direction. So I would say let's give the planning board a chance, see what they come up with, and that is a commercial space. I am torn between protecting the neighborhood and growing a commercial base, but it's clearly already designated for commercial development. And if the neighbors in the immediate area of Edward Street, this is a way for them to move out of that area, because I think a lot of them really want to, except for the one that wants to stay and are going to accommodate them, that they will not have another opportunity like this if something like this doesn't happen. So I'm going to vote to proceed with it just to see what comes out of it.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor DeCoe.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to agree with most of the people in this room. This has been a very difficult process for me, evaluating the potential economic benefit with the needs and the real, genuine concerns of the neighbors. What I'm hoping will come out of it is that we, as a council and as a city, really see the value and move forward on developing these master plans in the neighborhood, so future development projects don't end up in a courtroom where someone's going to leave upset. So I'd like to proceed with this vote when we're ready, but put it out there on the table that we do need to have these master plans developed and include the neighborhoods in these conversations.
I believe Councilor Murphy had his hand up before me.
Councilor Murphy, Chair recognizes Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are really 2 points that I'd like to make, and the first is about economic development. Because, obviously nobody on this council is against economic development, but the question is really about what kind of economic development that we have. And maybe it is true that we have to go back to, the residents of this neighborhood have to go back and relook at, what our zoning is for that. And is that really what we have as a vision for that particular neighborhood? Because obviously, if it is zoned this way, then it allows the opportunity for that to grow as this project may do anyway. But economic development does not take place project by project. It doesn't take place in isolation of other projects. And the economic benefits of this project aren't as clear as some would say. We don't know whether or not this will result in growth. It may very well just result in a shift, first in jobs, and then in revenue, and you don't know what kinds of businesses will be driven out because of this project if it goes forward. I think the second part, really, of this is the idea that this is a procedural vote. It is, but it enables the project to go forward. I think the point that one of the residents made, Mr. Maria, I think, was that this really wasn't in the best interests of the community. And if you have, basically, I think the difference is, between somebody, asking what you'd like to have for dinner, and somebody saying, this is what we're going to have for dinner, how would you like it prepared? It's not about, just mitigating the project going forward. I think it's whether or not the project should take place. And this vote is the last vote that the council has, which will enable this project to go forward. And so I think that you're creating too many problems if you do go forward with this project. There are problems with the traffic. It may be worsened. There are problems, I think, with flooding within that particular area that will be worsened by more impervious surfaces through the parking lots, both proposed for the soccer fields and for the project itself. And that raises concerns as well. But as councilors, we really have to make decisions that we think will further the public health, safety, and welfare. And while I can sympathize, with Mr. and Mrs. LeBlanc, who have lived there all their lives and want to stay there without having to deal with those flooding issues, I think that it's not in the best interest of that neighborhood or of the city in terms of how we go about economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a good debate.
The chair, by the way, would like to speak.
And a worthwhile debate.
The chair would like to speak on the issue at some point, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Broderick made note of the fact that this report is 2006. And this report is from Mass Highway. It's 2007. Councilor Broderick, the truth of the matter is if we got the latest report, it'd be even more negative than this. That's the problem. And I don't believe Lowell's Home Building Center ever came before the City Council. It went before the Zoning Board of Appeals. It went before the Lowell Planning Board. I don't think it ever came before this council. As Mr. Maria pointed out, yes, the city's receiving $350,000 for a small vacant piece of land that's probably worthless. And that $350,000 will be long gone. But that 15,000 square foot drugstore will be there forever. Forever. If I may, I'd like to have the gentleman who's representing the traffic engineers. I thank you for being here, and I know you represent a client, and you're doing the best job you can for that client. But you indicated to this council, to the city manager and the viewing audience at home, that the reason for so many accidents in intersections, people are texting and not paying attention. Is that so?
It's a contributing cause to some of the crashes that are happening there, but not the sole, and in this case is not the exclusive reason that there are so many crashes happening at the intersection.
Now, Wood Street and Middlesex Street is signalized, isn't it?
That's correct.
Like other intersections.
Other intersections with similar traffic volumes, that's correct.
Now, this report I have before me, the average intersection with signalization, the accident rate is 0.78. Is that correct? You agree to that?
That's the average within the state Mass Highway, Mass Department of Transportation District. That's correct, at a signalized intersection, yes.
In your report that you did, you indicated that Middlesex Street and Wood Street is 1.56 per million cars, which is double the accident rate.
That's correct.
So what you're trying to tell me in this council, there were more people texting at Wood Street and Middlesex Street than any other intersection.
No, in fact, what's happening at that intersection is a lot of left turn crashes, and that's why.
That's the issue.
That's correct.
That's what we're bringing forward here. It's not that we're against Walgreens building or Joe's Tire Shop. Would this council or the school committee vote to build a school there? No.
Not without improvements. You should not do anything. In fact, the improvements that we've said in the traffic study need to get done today.
How are you planning on improving that intersection, sir?
The primary cause of the crashes that are happening at that intersection are angle-type crashes in the middle of the intersection from both approaches on Middlesex Street. So it's someone trying to make a left-hand turn that's hitting a through movement at that intersection. What's happening is that drivers, because of the volume of traffic that's there, they can't see as they're trying to make the left-hand turns, and they're inching, and they get hit by a through car there. What needs to happen is that left turn lanes need to be installed on both of those approaches at the intersection so that those motorists are offset a little bit so that they can see the car that's approaching them. That's what we're proposing to do as an improvement at that intersection. If you build nothing, that improvement needs to happen at that location to address the primary cause of the crashes that are happening there.
One last question to you, and no matter what you say, will not convince me. But one last question.
I appreciate that.
The building of this drugstore, is that going to attract more traffic?
It will attract more traffic, that's
More
correct.
traffic.
Yes.
There's 30,000 cars a day to go through there every day. 14,000 outbound,
That's right.
15,000 inbound.
Correct.
How much more traffic do you want to put in that intersection?
If you do not make improvements at that intersection,
You-
then you cannot accommodate additional
Houdini
traffic.
couldn't make improvements there. And my last statement, sir, this old cliche, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And I don't care what you do, you're not going to make any improvements to that intersection because the roads are inadequate, the bridge is inadequate, and there's just too much traffic. And you know that.
I know that we can make improvements, and that's what we're planning to do there, to make the traffic flow safer and to accommodate the additional traffic, not only from this project, but other development in the city.
And there was a comment made on the council floor that, well, if someone on Edward Street was complaining, then they would vote against it. What about the person who lives across from Edward Street? We're dealing with the quality of life of people who live in that neighborhood. There could have been hundreds of people down here tonight. Hundreds. And I don't care where you go in the Highlands, whether it's Stevens Street, Parker Street, or Princeton Boulevard. People are talking about this vote tonight and this development. And the feedback I'm receiving is they're crazy because that intersection is ludicrous right now. There's no way you can improve it. No way. Drum Hill is backed up with traffic from Route 3 across the Rook Bridge. The traffic begins at the Virgaropolis Bridge, Middlesex Street, over the Rook Bridge. There's nowhere to put it, sir. Nowhere. And did you recommend putting a stop sign at the end of Cornell Street and one at the end of Columbia Street?
Yes, and I would continue to do so because it needs to be there. As a professional engineer, if I find that there's a sign missing, whether or not it should have been put there or needs to be replaced, it is incumbent upon me to point out the fact that there needs to be a stop sign there.
The traffic engineer in the city, Mr. Manager, should have put those signs up 2 years ago. I mean to tell me a drugstore is going to enable us to put these stop signs up? That's wrong. And the signal behind the pole, I brought that up 3 years ago. And the developer is going to make all these great things happen. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I don't want to take my frustrations out on you.
I
Thank you,
appreciate that. Thank
Councilor
you.
Caulfield. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and be brief because I've said most of what I'm going to say. But, you know, we're told that we're adding traffic here and it doesn't make any sense. There's nothing that can be done to make it better. Yet we're talking about examples that have happened in the city. Councilor Caulfield and Councilor Broderick talked about the Northern Middlesex Council of Government study, the 3 worst intersections. The first one cited is Bridge Street. What happened on Bridge Street? CVS was added. Now, I'm not really happy about the way that intersection works today, but I think you'd be hard-pressed to say that CVS made it worse. And we had many struggles with CVS to design it in a way that the city wanted to make it work. The second thing that's mentioned, Plain Street and Powell Street. That's the second worst intersection. What did we do there? Target was added, and improvements were made to that intersection and at the entrance to the plaza. Now, that one didn't require council approval, nor did the CVS, but certainly no one on this council in the course of the campaign or in the course of discussions about the things the council does had any problem singing the praises of those 2 projects. We're welcoming economic development into the city, yet into the worst 2 intersections that we have. Councilor Mendonça mentioned the McDonald's. Again, a very difficult intersection, yet I think we'd be hard-pressed to say that McDonald's made it worse. And Lowe's was also discussed. Now, I think Lowe's did come before this council. That's my memory. We had votes on similar votes like we have tonight for street abandonments and widenings, and it remains to be seen. But certainly improvements were made. This is where retail businesses want to be. They want to be where traffic is, and what we can do is do our best to ensure that they don't make the problem worse, and where there's opportunity for improvement, like on Powell Street, that we insist on the improvements be made, and insist on improvements that make this intersection safer too. So I think it's perfectly consistent with what this council has done. We're all in favor of protecting neighborhoods. This, I think we can hopefully point to this and say this is better down the line. Maybe it won't be better, but I'm confident with the attention of the planning board, it's certainly not going to be worse, and the city's going to be better off for it with the economic development project, the pro-business spirit of the council, and the tax revenue that will also last for all time.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to go back for a second and clarify. We're not talking about improving traffic. We're talking about improving safety and the flow of traffic. Totally different concepts. We're not going to reduce the number of cars going in and out or going by that intersection through the intersection. We're talking about the flow and the safety of them. And I wouldn't sit here tonight and take the vote I'm going to take if I didn't think that was possible. We're talking about signal changes in some lanes, adding some left-hand turns. You can take a left-hand turn now coming inbound from Middlesex Street, but you're taking it at your own peril because there's a green light going both ways. So you have people rushing through, and that's how accidents are caused. I represent people that get in accidents in that same intersection. It's a dangerous place the way it is, and it's incumbent upon us to do something to change that. And I think that we have to be clear. This is about improving traffic flow and the safety, and that can be accomplished. Our traffic engineer is telling us it can, and I would leave it up to the planning board to make sure that that's done properly.
Thank you. I think we've debated this for quite some time. I'd like to ask the Vice Mayor to come up and take the chair. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Again, let me begin by saying that I think it has been a very good debate on both sides of the issue, and I want to commend my colleagues for really doing their homework and looking at the issue, and I also want to thank the residents who were here last week and those that are here this evening to talk about this, because it is an important issue. It is a quality of life issue, but I have to say that I was part of the original 2 votes to move this project forward. I plan to support the discontinuance and abandonment of Edward Street this evening, because I really do believe this is our way to get improvements that are needed at this intersection to be done. I have confidence in the planning board to make sure that those mitigation issues are addressed, that the residents will certainly attend those public hearings and make their wishes be known. I actually lived at 1852 Middlesex Street for 3 years, so I know that neighborhood. I know that intersection. I know the traffic issues that are there and the reasons for those accidents. And I really do believe that what the engineer from Vanessa Heng and Breslin has talked about, what our own traffic engineer is talking about, will be mitigating factors to improve that intersection. If we sit here and do nothing based upon the fact that the property is already zoned commercial, that another commercial establishment could go into that location, again, putting it back out for proposal, which I think is, from looking at it from the view of the entire city, to bring that revenue into the city, I think we would probably do that. And we may not be sitting here getting or being told that through the planning board process we'll be able to alleviate the traffic issues, not alleviate them entirely, but improve them in that neighborhood. Yes, there's 30,000 cars that traverse those streets on a daily basis. However, based upon the reports that I read, we're going to increase traffic by about 1%. And again, a number of my colleagues talked about the other 2 intersections in this community that were improved as a result of economic development activities, and I hope that that will happen here at Middlesex and Wood Street. Again, it's not an easy vote, but in my opinion, looking at it from the standpoint of the needed tax revenue for the city, the quality of life that I think will actually improve with the traffic changes, the traffic improvements, I think this is the right step to take and to keep, from a procedural standpoint, this, what I deem to be an economic development project moving forward. So with that said, Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to vote in favor of the abandonment. Thank you.
Move the question, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
No.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia,
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo,
Yes.
Councilor Murphy,
No.
Councilor Broderick,
No.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
That was a yes.
does anyone
Gotta
think
seek
he's
that.
anxious? Councilor Broderick,
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield,
No.
6 yeas, 3 nays, vote passes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to move right into public hearing time.
Mr. Flood? It was a good debate.
Yes. Thank you again for being here. It being public hearing time and then some, first public hearing in City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the new code of ordinance for the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, the code with respect to Chapter 266 thereof entitled Vehicles and Traffic. I'd like to open the public hearing for all those wishing to speak in favor. Those wishing to speak in favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? That portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Roll call.
Councilor Dakota,
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. The second public hearing this evening in City Council ordinance. An ordinance creating one grant fiscal coordinator full-time, one NIBRS tracking analyst full-time, one policy and procedure accreditation manager part-time, and one data entry clerk part-time, and establishing the salaries therefore in the police department. I'd like to open the public hearing for all those wishing to speak in favor. Superintendent LaValle.
Yes, I would like to speak in favor. Thank you, Adam, for staying for my presentation.
And thank you for being here. I know you were here since about
I
quarter
thought
to seven.
everybody was leaving. They saw me here, they all left. We have been very fortunate in the police department to have received $5.5 million in state and federal grants in 2009 due to the hard work of members of the staff of the police department, particularly our research and development division. And one of the fortunate aspects of the grants we received was a grant of almost $600,000 from basically the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. This grant is entitled the Civilian Hiring and Retention Grant. That's going to allow us to retain several staff members in the police department who would have been laid off if not for this grant, as well as allow us to hire some new personnel, people who are we can bring back to the police department to do the work that we need to get done in NIBRS, which is a reporting system for the FBI and the federal government. In our finance office, work that needs to be done to manage these grants, and also to be able to hire a part-time person. We hope to come in and work on the policies and procedures in the Lowell Police Department to revise those, improve those, and then ultimately lead us towards an accredited police agency in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So that's the plan with the money we received from the grants. And we would also like to see if we could take money we received through the STEP account, which is the Strategic Traffic Enforcement Program, and utilize some of that money, which is generated through the writing of citations for traffic violators in the city, and hire a part-time person to come in and enter these citations into the system. Currently, unfortunately, we have officers doing this work, and that would free up a position of a police officer, allow that officer to be more involved in street operations, and a civilian person would do the work inside the station and enter these citations into the system.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? We'll ask questions of the superintendent as soon as we close the public hearing. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I'd like to recognize Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the superintendent, it seems that 3 of the positions before us will be paid from the American Recovery and Reinvestment of Justice Assistance Grant. What is the other position going to be funded through what? The STEP grant?
Right. The other position is solely going to be funded through the funds that we receive from the citations we write because of the grant, the STEP account allows us to do that, Councilor. We cannot keep up with the volume, unfortunately, and the officer who is doing this data entry really could be better utilized working the street than he is in the police station. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to bring someone in at absolutely no cost to the city. The money is in the STEP account. There's a significant amount there to allow us to hire someone part-time, enter these citations, do other clerical functions within the police department, and that would allow us to keep a police officer on the street.
Do you think that any of the people that were laid off might be offered any of these positions?
It's certainly very likely. I anticipate that we will have people who were laid off from the police department reapply for these positions that are available. There is one position, however, the part-time position for the person we intend to hire to do the policies and procedures. There's a very specific knowledge base for that particular job, and the requirements are quite significant. So we need to make sure that we hire the person for that job who has a very significant background in the writing of policies and procedures for a police department. We'd like to hire someone who has already been affiliated with a law enforcement agency that has received national accreditation, and if we can bring that person on board, that would be a great addition to the police department.
And next Monday at the Lowell Memorial Auditorium will be an award ceremony for the different officers that have showed valor and courage, and I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. We will have our annual award ceremony next Monday evening, and we will highlight really the members of the department, both sworn and non-sworn, civilian staff who've done a great job, some civilian staff who've saved some lives, dispatchers, detention attendants, some officers who've done remarkable work, and I think we're also going to highlight the partnerships we have with federal, state, and county law enforcement agencies. As you know, we work very closely with the Middlesex Sheriff's Office, with DEA, with the state police, and we're going to recognize some of those officers and agents and troopers who've worked with us very closely over the last year.
Thank you. I just wanted to get that info.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Obviously, everybody's invited to be there that night. I think you've all been invited.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes, I also caught that as I was reviewing this, is that we have 3 grant positions paid for by the grant, and this stipulates that when the grant funds end, so do the positions. In the case of the other job, even though it says it's temporary, we're creating a position, and since it's temporary, I'm just questioning when will it end? What will trigger it, that not being a position in our, I'm not sure what they call it, list of positions, in the sense that we're in fiscal tough times, and if we have to make cuts, I don't want to be in a position of adding someone now that we then have to lay off later. That's what I'm concerned about.
Okay, Manager Lynch.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, in response to Councilman Mendonca's question, as the superintendent's pointed out, we intend to use the STEP grant, which allows us to, which is a traffic control grant, to pay for those, to pay for this position. If that money stops coming in, then we would be in a position then it would no longer justify retaining this position. So we would look to eliminate it at that time. So for all intents and purposes, we have the same parameters as the stimulus money funded grants.
Okay, so that, through the mayor, that'll be clear to the applicant that this is a temporary position and could disappear at any time the funding is lacking?
Yes, and obviously, if the money runs out for the stimulus money is going to run out in 2 years, hopefully at that point, if these positions continue to be justified, and there are other monies that are available, then we would hopefully be able to retain those people. There are other grant monies that may come about. Likewise, if this money runs out on this, but there are other responsibilities and other funding sources that could be used, we would look to do that. But absent those conditions, then we would eliminate these positions.
Okay, thank you.
It's my intention, I'm sorry, we were very successful at obtaining grant money last year.
That's right.
The council allowed me and members of my staff to travel to Washington, where we had face-to-face meetings with very critical people who make these decisions. And last week, I met with the new head of the COPS office, Chief Malakian, who is the Pasadena police chief, and we conversed about having a meeting in Washington in April, and I'm going to request that I go back and speak with him. This has been very, very beneficial to the city, and to be able to have these literally discussions in person has, I think, made a great difference, and he's very excited about me going down. And interestingly enough, as the chief of the Pasadena Police Department, a city of 140,000 people, his police department, he is now the head of the COPS office who hands out this money, received 0 funding last year, despite the fact that they applied for all these funds. And we were tremendously successful, and there was $1 billion made available to law enforcement agencies across the country, $8 billion in applications. So you can see that really just 1 in 8 grants were activated, and we were very fortunate to receive those. And it's a very competitive process. You really have to present a tremendous argument in favor of why your agency and your city should receive these grant funds, and I think the meetings we had in D.C. last year played a great role in that, and I intend to go back and continue to really work on behalf of the city and the police department to seek further funding, because there will be more grant opportunities available for us. So I want to really continue to work very hard to do that.
Thank you. Councilor Roderick, then Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations, Chief, and to you and your staff. It's obviously a good job getting these funds. If you could let us know, is there going to be any impact or what effect this will have, any unemployment triggered at some point if these people have to be let go? Is the city going to be responsible for unemployment charges or anything like that?
We would, at some point down the road, if we did let someone go, they would be, if they were an employee, they would be eligible for unemployment, yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to follow up on the chief's comments about the trip to Washington, because I don't think it's been emphasized enough. I know when you went, Chief, you were kind enough to provide a report back to the council, and I think it was not lost on us how important it was that you made that trip. But in addition to being more than $8 billion for $1 billion in funds, the word I was hearing from people was that these funds were going to be sucked up by big city departments, places like Boston and Philadelphia and Chicago, and by the time it got to smaller sized cities like Lowell, there'd be nothing left. And so I know, as in conjunction, I think with 5th District Day, Congresswoman Tsongas, you were able to go down and make the case for cities like Lowell.
Right.
And obviously what you did was very effective, and certainly well worth the trip, because we were able to save officers on the street. And this, I think, is just another example of the diligent work that you and the folks that work in the police department are doing for residents of the city. So I wanted to say thank you and congratulations, but I think we've known on the council for a long time, reviewing the reports we get, how important this work is, but I don't think we've highlighted it enough publicly. So congratulations on a job well done, and certainly I think it's well worth the trip to Washington annually to keep Lowell in front of the face of the people making these grant awards.
Right. The Lowell received the 3rd largest award in the Commonwealth after Boston, New Bedford. We were 3rd, and some of these other police departments really who have significant issues in their communities receive no funding at all, because, as I said, it's a very competitive process, and you have to have a really good grant application in place, and you have to really argue on behalf of your agency to get these funds. Thank you.
Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Chief, you mentioned earlier in your presentation, there were 3 employees who would be on grants. 1 employee would be hired part-time.
Yes, there'd actually be 2
Because you
part-time
have-
employees, 1 grant-funded part-time employee, and 1 part-time employee funded through the STEP account.
Right now, you have a police officer doing that work.
Yeah, we have a civilian person and a police officer, and we, again, want to free up that officer and get that officer on the street.
I agree wholeheartedly with you. The officer, even though they're doing a good job in the police department, they should be out
Right. Right.
protecting the public
Sure.
and so forth. But I would like to echo everyone's feelings in these council chambers. You have a staff of civilian employees that are second to none. And even though I tried to, as mayor, I wanted to present this employee with a citation, extremely humble, and the reply was, that's my job. Millions of dollars this employee has brought in to this police department.
Right.
And I respect that employee immensely, along with other civilian employees and the men and women of the police department.
Right.
But, you know, sometimes you're so close to the forest, you can't see the tree. And you're talking millions of dollars this one employee, pen to paper, has brought into the city. And Chief, on behalf of the council, let her know how much we appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, yeah, it's Jen Ball, her staff, 2 other grant people, and they were slated to be laid off. We did not have the funding for her staff, and several other civilian employees until we received these grants that they were able to generate. So not only are we able to hire these new people that we're talking about tonight, but we saved considerable number of civilian jobs in the police department, very critical positions. People who work in crime analysis, people who work in our MIS division, people who work in the family services unit, our community liaisons. These are very important positions to the police department and the proper functioning of the organization. So thank you.
Manager Lynch?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, and at this point I'll be echoing what all the councilors have said, but I know the superintendent and the staff over at the police department certainly know of my appreciation for their hard work and the efforts they make and just the excellent work that they do in tracking down these millions of dollars that Councilor Caulfield referred to. Really, we couldn't have done as well as we did this year in getting through this budget without the work of the superintendent and his trips and meeting with people to lobby on behalf of the city, and certainly Jen Ball and her staff and the Research Bureau over there that have tracked down these grants, have written the grants, and really made the case for why the city of Lowell deserves this money. And so I certainly appreciate the kind words of all the councilors, and I know the staff over there knows that we truly appreciate what they do. Unfortunately, we weren't able to fill every position. There's still work that has had to be taken up, and the superintendent and I have been discussing a number of reorganization efforts that we're going to have to do over at the police department with our civilian staff so that we continue to stay on the ball and getting this money into the city, because literally it has been millions of dollars that we're pulling in. And so we'll be coming forward in the future with a little bit of that reorganization plan and some changes with some of the staffing over there to make sure that we continue to be able to do the job and continue to have the staff in place that has been so successful for the city. But I want to thank the superintendent and that staff once again for their work. And then to Councilor Mercia's question as to the laid off employees, we are certainly, it's our practice to reach out to the laid off employees whenever we feel that there's a position that for which they might be qualified, and even at other points in time, just to give them the opportunity to come in and continue to stay involved in looking for positions. I'm happy to say that we have taken a number of those people that were laid off last year and have brought them back onto the city in grant positions and other positions that we have. So we're doing our best to get them back and employed with the city, and we'll continue to do so.
I think, you know, we don't even recognize, for example, the opioid grant, which was not even for the police department, for the health department. It was written by our staff. And Jennifer Ball and her staff put this grant together and received, again, that's not even mentioned in this list of grants we received, but hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight this opioid addiction issue in the city. So that's, again, it's just a tremendous amount of work.
Right.
Thank you again, Chief. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval by
Second.
Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you, Superintendent
Thank you.
Lavalley. Thank
Good night,
you.
guys.
That ends the public hearing portion of the agenda. Moving on now with the city manager's portion of the agenda. Communications from city manager, responses to council motions and requests. Do we have any? Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, there's a communication in here on the solid waste recycling and recycling enforcement. If you could maybe just give a quick rundown of that for people at home so they understand what's, once enforcement starts, that they're not being picked on, that it's a year old now.
Well, if I may, I think it's very simply, we've spent the last almost year putting in place the new trash system, and we've been trying to do education, and that has certainly proven helpful. We've noticed that the number of violations has gone down, but clearly there comes a point in time when you have to actually start to make enforcement a little bit more hard-hitting. And so we have been working, we are implementing the 21D ticket system that we use in other departments of the city to actually go out and start to issue citations and violation notices when there are violations of the trash ordinance. And this is going, as of Monday, January 4th, this occurred, that when we see a violation or one is reported to us, we actually go out, we document with digital photos, we leave hangers at the residents, warning them that, that they've offended the ordinance. We then issue an actual ticket warning the people, and then if there are follow-up violations at that same site, that same location, we actually begin fining the people, and the fines range from $25 to $200, depending upon the severity of the conditions. So this will be occurring. I'm sure councilors may hear of cases of this happening. Residents may start to see this happening. But certainly the feedback we've received from residents across the city, and I think the councilors would agree with this, that people are happy with the new trash system. They see it working. They're abiding by the rules, and they just want to make sure that their neighbors and other people in the city actually abide by the rules as well. Certainly in working with the neighborhood organizations and neighborhood leaders, this is something that they are very anxious that we do, that just giving warnings or just educational efforts really isn't enough. Everyone should understand the system now, and people need to know that there's now teeth to the ordinance, and that we're actually going to be going out and enforcing it and fining people. And I think in the end, the system will work all the better with that happening. So that's what.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott, then Councilor Caulfield.
Just a couple of questions. Mr. Manager, what happens if a violation occurs and it's a person that's renting and, the homeowner doesn't know about it? I mean, is there some process in place? I'm going to presume that there'll be a lien on the property, and the homeowner may not even know that the renter or the tenant is in compliance. So how will that work?
In a case like that, I believe that the system that we have set up is to send a notice to the owner of the property, who would then be alerted to the problem, and then the fine would be with them, but they would have to notify their tenant.
No, that makes sense. And I agree with you. I think the new system is working very well. I think we've given this time to work out whatever bugs there may be, and people have been giving warnings, myself included, that my barrel was too close to the tree, and needs a 3-foot clearance. But I think it's important. Those people that are trying to be in compliance they've been given warnings, but there are some that just are not, and I think we have to take this step forward. So I appreciate it. Is this the only way of notifying the general public? Are we going to maybe put it on the cable, or?
We will be, I think people are pretty much expecting that we're going to be
Right,
doing it
okay.
anyway, and certainly the warnings that we put out there with the tickets will be the
Okay,
same
no,
way
I
we'll do it
think you're right.
elsewhere.
I think you mentioned it. We've done our job to let people know. We've done outreach and education through neighborhood organizations, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see you have a motion on about the lighting on Third Street.
Yes,
I also brought this motion forward. I believe it's the same thing.
correct. And I was planning to withdraw my motion,
On
Council
December
Caulfield.
15th, and I have a
Yes.
communication here.
Right.
And is there any way, Mr. Manager, we can fulfill the mayor's motion and my motion?
The two mayors.
Mayors.
The
Great minds think alike.
This was just giving the council a report on this. This is a case. It's an interesting situation, as you see from the response that we've put together. That we need to, if we are going to do lighting out there, we need to somehow transfer the operation to the parking department, really to establish a process for collecting revenue. The city generally isn't in the business of providing lighting or maintenance to parking lots that are used exclusively for a particular property and not for the citizens as a whole. If in fact we do that, then there's needs to be some system set up to bring revenue in to pay for that lighting, to pay for that maintenance. So based upon this report that we've given you, it's my intent to pass this on to the parking department for a report on the appropriate action and then report back to the council on what needs to be done. But I wanted to give you a report of progress.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Council Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we all received an email regarding the emails that people receive or send to us through the city website. Can you speak to the, I'm not sure if you were CC'd, Mr. Manager, but are you aware there was, I received an email from a resident saying that I sent an email to all the city councilors and it didn't go through. So I'm wondering if there's a glitch in the system. I have noticed that there have been less emails.
I'm not aware of any
Okay.
change in the system, and I haven't seen that email.
Okay.
So I can't really speak.
Okay, well, I'll forward you the email, but essentially, Ms. Parsegian has indicated she sent an email and she didn't get any acknowledgement from anybody, so she wondered if there was a problem. So maybe you could look into it and see if there was. I think I have been receiving some other emails, so maybe the system's corrected.
Thank you. Councilor Dakota?
Thank
and
you.
Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to go back to the solid waste. I have just a couple questions. I notice it says on the final warning sheet, please have this notice translated immediately. Is there a system for knowing what language you'll send a warning to the family in?
No, we
So
don't.
they'll all go out in English?
We
And
don't. Everything goes out in this just like this, and so that we don't know what language. So
of
we
course
ask
you don't.
people
Okay.
to we try to at least put the in the particular language the need to have this translated so that there's an
So
understanding.
that's what that means. They understand that's for them to have it
Correct.
translated. Okay, excellent. And just a second question. All of these fines, it says fines up to 300, fines up to 300. Is there an actual fine level for each violation, or is it arbitrary based on the person writing it?
I believe and I don't have the ordinance right in front of me, but I believe it's based upon the number of times it's been violated.
Okay. Per household?
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on motions, responses? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Accept the communications,
Okay,
please, on file.
Thank you. Accept the communication placed on file by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, to vote. Thank you. Next item, communication from City Manager. Request out-of-state travel, and I believe we have two out-of-state travel requests, one from the Police Department and one from the Fire Department.
Move for approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Next item is a communication from the City Manager. Appointment to Green Building Commissioner. We have a letter in our packet. Pursuant to the authority vested in me as city manager, it is with pleasure that I am appointing David E. Willett of 139 Buttman Road, Lowell, Mass., to the Green Building Commission. Since confirmation by the city council is not required for this appointment, this letter is notification of such appointment. I have attached his resume for your review. I would be happy to answer any inquiry you may have concerning this appointment. Accept the communication placed on file by Councilor Rita Mercia, seconded by Councilor Mendoza. All those in favor of accepting the communication, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Vote authorizing the manager to enter into a license agreement with Chapman Waterproofing Arena. In City Council vote authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with Chapman Waterproofing Company with principal offices at 395 Columbia Road, Boston, Mass. 02125 for use of City of Lowell property to wit 300 Martin Luther King Way for investigating the vapor barrier at the Paul E. Songas Arena and to create 2 exterior opening and brick facade and 2 interior openings and temporarily patch such openings in a weather-tight manner. Be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the city manager is hereby authorized to enter into a license agreement with Chapman Waterproofing Company with principal offices at 395 Columbia Road, Boston, Mass. for use of City of Lowell property to wit 300 Martin Luther King Way for investigating the vapor barrier at the Paul E. Songas Arena and to create 2 exterior opening in brick facade and 2 interior openings and temporarily patch such openings in a weather-tight manner. Second reading by title. In City Council vote authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with Chapman Waterproofing Company with principal offices at 395 Columbia Road, Boston for use of City of Lowell property to wit 300 Martin Luther King Way for investigating the vapor barrier at the Paul E. Songas Arena and to create 2 exterior openings in the brick facade and 2 interior openings and temporarily patch such openings in a weather-tight manner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Mercia.
Through you to the city manager. Mr. Manager, how do we justify signing a license agreement that holds the city harmless from all injuries with work that was done on January 11th and 12th? I mean, I could understand it if we voted on it and it was brought before us on January 5th, but it's almost like businesses that come before their issue comes before the council to accept them, give them the right to hang a sign, and it's been out there a month ago. So I know it's probably tying up loose ends, but this was a vote that holds the city harmless. What if back then we didn't vote on this and somebody did get hurt and we didn't have this paper in place? How do you justify something like that? I don't.
Yeah.
I know there's a timeline, but
right, and that really is. It is a timeline, and it's similar in many respects to some of the councilors may remember when the fighter was being filmed. There was need to go onto property to do a filming that was owned by the city, and we had to get the license approved after the fact. It's certainly not the preferred way of doing business. The issue here is that the university is trying to do their due diligence and in looking at the arena, and they have people come in and they have to be able to get in and make the necessary take the necessary investigatory work, and and we need to then to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and we come forward with the license agreement. Perhaps the city solicitor would like to add to that.
No, it's exactly the same thing. It was a very time-sensitive phase of the due diligence, and in order for the closing to timely take place, we've already been delayed once. This was one of the things that had to happen, and it had to happen right away. Unfortunately, the city had really gotten very little notice, and the Massachusetts Building Authority themselves probably had, in turn, little notice from the contractors as they went through the due diligence phase. And what really necessitated this was some missing documents and a belief that this vapor barrier was not located where it needed to be. And as far as the city being protected, as the manager indicated, this certainly isn't the preferred way of doing business, but by the same token, should anything happen, we would have been, fully protected and indemnified as well.
And who paid for this?
This was all paid for by the Massachusetts Building Authority.
And why would they pay for such a thing? An hour?
Because well, they're going to be taking, when they take over the facility, this was something that had to happen, and all the costs are being borne by the building authority. It's going to become their building, and
Oh, well, I'm glad
potentially
that we didn't
in a
assume
matter
that
of
cost.
in a matter of days, and this was something that that needed to be done,
I
and
just
it really
wanted to
couldn't have
know.
been delayed. It was a good question.
Okay, thank you.
Council Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is as long as it's signed by the contractor, the city's protected. It's enforceable against the party that signed, so the fact that they signed it, the city, the solicitor did, it looks like we were protected and the proper steps were taken. The fact that we hadn't signed it would really be an issue for the contractor if in the event something arose. But I think we were properly covered, on the city side.
Thank you. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Dakota. Roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next item on the agenda, in-city council vote authorizing the city manager to execute an easement for the city of Lowell to University of Massachusetts Building Authority for the grantee's marquee sign to encroach upon city property located at 168 Martin Luther King Jr. Way in the city of Lowell. Be it voted by the city council of the city of Lowell as follows: that the city manager be and hereby is authorized to execute an easement from the city of Lowell to the University of Massachusetts Building Authority for the grantee's marquee sign to encroach upon city property located at 168 Martin Luther King Jr. Way in said Lowell. Said easement shall be in the form or substantially the form attached hereto. Be it further voted that any cost of recording the easement and related plans shall be at the grantee's expense. Second reading by title. In city council vote authorizing the city manager to execute an easement from the city of Lowell to University of Massachusetts Building Authority for the grantee's marquee sign to encroach upon city property located at 168 Martin Luther King Jr. Way in the city of Lowell.
Move approval.
Move approval. Motion by Council Caulfield, second by Council Martin. Any further discussion? Council Mendonça.
I think I know the answer, but this is for the sign that's actually at the corner of Father Morissette Boulevard and the entrance to the arena.
That's correct.
So we continue to own that lot right there along Father Morissette. That's not transferred along with the
No,
arena.
the only properties being transferred to the university are the arena, the land that the arena sits on, and parcel B, the parking area and the old post office garage, going all the way back down to the pump station that's back there. Everything in front of that is still owned by the city.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin? Yes. Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next item, in city council, order of taking and acceptance of Bernier Street extension to take by eminent domain in fee for a certain parcel of land in the city of Lowell for municipal purposes, to wit, the layout and acceptance of Bernier Street extension and other municipal purposes associated therewith. This needs to be referred to a public hearing scheduled for February 2nd by Councilor Murphy, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor of sending this to public hearing February 2nd signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Goes to public hearing February 2nd. Thank you. Vote in City Council order to restore staffing in the City Manager's office, ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows: that the amount of $45,000 be transferred from Greater Lowell Technical School Assessment Account Number 014581565615500 to Salaries and Wages Permanent Account Number 012341551-511000. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Flinch, City Manager. Second reading by title, in City Council vote order to restore staffing in the City Manager's office. Council Rita Mercia.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the city manager. Now, this is just a vote to transfer. This is not establishing that position yet, right?
The position was never eliminated, Councilor, so it's restoring the money to the city manager's office budget so that we can move forward to fill the
But
position.
that'll be another vote at another time?
No,
Or it's
it's
the
the position.
vote-
The position was never eliminated. It was action that was taken by the city council last May or June was to reduce the city manager's budget by $85,000. The position remained intact, and this is simply moving forward to fill that position.
So you have someone already?
Not yet. I'm interviewing a number of people and continuing to look around.
Now, this 45,000 Voc School assessment money comes from a total of 500,000, or how much?
No,
did we get?
currently and this was in a report that was given to the council back in December. The Greater Lowell Technical Assessment is that's in the budget, is $129,879 higher than the actual assessment. So this would be coming off that $129,000.
Okay.
That budget change was made after the budget was approved.
And is this in a separate account, this particular money? Is it in a separate assessment fund? Where is this in the general fund? Is it in the general fund?
It is in the general fund. It's set aside for the Greater Lowell Technical High School. But we budgeted higher than the actual assessment came in. They changed the assessment after the fiscal year began.
So it's in the general fund?
That's correct.
And it went over to the state as not free cash or anything like that?
No, it's never gone anywhere. It's stayed right there. In the report that we provided the council back in December, there are several areas within the general fund that we indicated we'd be coming forward with various transfers after the fiscal year began. We didn't need to make any changes in the recap sheet at that time. It's money that we had for a variety of needs that we saw that would arise, including trash removal, health insurance for some health insurance, as well as school workers' compensation, workers' comp, some arena ice improvements. These were all in that report that we gave, as well as other issues that arose during the year.
Now, so it was an assessment amount of $129,000 that you're telling me.
The
from
budget that was
from the Voc School assessment account, right? That we've over budgeted $129,000, right? You're just taking $45,000 out of it for this particular position, which is like half of a year. How are we doing this?
Essentially, I think you have it, Councilor, that when we passed the budget, when the administration brought forward the budget, when the City Council approved the budget, the number for the Greater Lowell Technical High School was $129,000 higher than it is today because of changes they made after the fact, largely because of changes in the state budget that occurred after we voted. So we moved through the year and continue to move through the year with $129,000 more than we actually need. Now, that's not to say we don't have other needs. We do. So what I'm proposing tonight, by bringing forward this motion, is to transfer $45,000 of that money that is there to bring back the assistant to the city manager position, funding for the assistant to the city manager position, which I anticipate to be somewhere in the vicinity of $35,000 or thereabouts. The remaining portion of this money will be used, if it's not used for that position, will be used to fund some part-time clerical assistants in the
So it
office.
will, the remainder of that money, like $84,000, would probably be used to bring other people back that were laid off?
In the city manager's office, yes.
In the city manager's office?
Right.
You're spending all that money to, so what are we talking about?
On an annualized basis, if you look at the $45,000, on an annualized basis, we're talking somewhere in the vicinity of $90,000 to $95,000 because we're a little bit into this fiscal year. And that money will be used to fund the assistant's position, which is somewhere between, let's just, $65,000 to $85,000. I'm hoping to fund it somewhere in the middle or less. And then the remaining portion will be to provide the clerical support that we need in the office.
So there won't be anything for any other departments, right?
As I indicated earlier in the evening, Councilor, we have brought back a number of people in those departments on a part-time or full-time basis. We still have some other people that are still looking and have not yet been brought back, but we're working to do that. And it is our anticipation that we will be able to do that over the next few months.
Well, that's good. That's good. Thank
Now,
you.
we still have a next fiscal year to look at as well, but we've made great progress in bringing people back.
What is the full amount of your assistant's position?
The salary range is $65,000 to $85,000. As I said, I'm hoping to bring that in at a halfway point or less.
And when do you think this position will be filled?
Hopefully within the next week to 10 days.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield, then Councilor Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can remember George Garabedian calling me in the mayor's office, verbally telling me about the wonderful news, and I went in and I spoke to Tom Moses about it, and it was followed up with a letter, and that $129,000 is for real. We're getting that back from the Greater Lowell Technical High School. All I want to ask the auditor is, do we have that money in-house now? Yes. Okay, so we're not going to vote for something we don't have.
We never sent the money to the
Okay.
tech school. We only sent the amount that was due, and there's still $129,000 left there.
Yeah, just one last question. When you hire this new assistant to the manager, it won't be an assistant city manager, but an assistant to the manager.
This position has always been, there was some confusion on this, I know, that I heard. This was always an assistant to the city manager.
Okay. And you're saying the ranges be 65,000
to 85,000.
I don't have a problem.
Thank you. Councilor Dakota.
Yes, thank you. Through you to the city manager. What account will be used to pay for the benefits of this position?
The benefits were never eliminated from the health insurance line, so there's still money in the health insurance line for that purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councilman Mendonça, then Councilor Murphy.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly hoping for good things as this position is restored, as I've had motions before that to the fact about eGov and not having quite as much response as we've had in the past. And so that I will expect that if they do come on soon, hopefully they'll get up to speed, and I do expect much improvement in that and the coordination of any complaints we get from our neighborhood groups and residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there is a pretty clear rationale for restoring the funding to this position. Councilor Mendonça mentioned his motion from last week about neighborhoods. If you follow through on things like the sustainability plan, which has, the promise of realizing some significant gains in efficiency and in cost savings, and things like the City Stat initiative, I think you can not only be able to pay for the position itself, but quite possibly in the future pay for the restoration of these other positions that Councilor Mercier is talking about. So I think it's a good motion.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, how many positions did you say that we have brought back? How many? I'm presuming of the 48 that we had to lay off, those are the people, we brought them back. They weren't new positions, correct? They were just filling vacancies through
That's correct.
Retirements?
That's correct. Right, generally speaking, that's the case, yes. There's some grant-funded positions that we've moved people into as well, yes.
We've met countless times in the finance subcommittee meeting, and I can appreciate that, you need somebody else in your office, your staff, Donna McIntosh, your executive assistant, and Kerry Rourke, as well as Mr. Moses and the rest of the employees. We're asking them to do more with less, and they have. I guess my concern with moving forward and funding a position and adding a position back is knowing the fiscal climate for next year. By all accounts, we've been told from the state to expect a cut. This is going to be the worst fiscal year that we have faced yet, and hopefully things will turn around by then. While we have no firm numbers, I understand that, but we know that this budget was extremely tight. Do you expect layoffs, knowing that we're going to get a cut next year? I mean, are we adding something that we're going to have to cut? Lay more people off. I'm concerned with adding another, adding a person back when we may be facing layoffs next year.
It's certainly conceivable that we may be facing layoffs next year. There's no doubt about that. I think, though, that Councilor Murphy really hit the nail on the head, and this has been a point that I've made from the beginning, that this position, if used properly, produces savings. I think if we look at the, certainly, and I can promise that we're going to do a better job with the eGov and the complaints. I can't promise that we'll be able to fully implement, for instance, CityStat with just this position, but we'll be able to put the plan together to really get CityStat up and running, which has a proven track record in the communities where it's been implemented to save millions of dollars. The position has certainly shown itself in its ability to do projects like the energy contracting that we wanted to do, that we're moving forward with Amoresco, that's going to save the city $40 million over the next 20 years. That was something that was really carried from start to finish by the assistant. There are reorganization opportunities that will produce savings. There's changes in procedures that will produce savings. So I have no doubt that this position, if it can result in real savings for the city and a better utilization of all of our resources, including my time, so that I'm really freed up to do the job that you've hired me to do, and that's to manage the city. The other part I think that's important is when people make complaints on eGov or look for a response to problems that they're having, we have to be able to do the job of finding those solutions and making progress and addressing those concerns. And I think people expect that of us, but in order to do that, we need to have the people in place, we need to have the resources in place to make that happen, and that's what this position is intended to do.
So, okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. If we were faced with layoffs, and I hope we don't, I really don't, but we have to be realistic. Would this be one, knowing that we're funding it, would this be one area that you would look if there were layoffs in the future?
To defund this position?
To defund this position?
No, it wasn't. And not to be, it wasn't my position to do that last year either. I see this as a crucial position. For a city this size, we need to have the proper staff in place to manage effectively. And absent that, very bluntly, we're wasting the taxpayers' money. We have to be able to manage the money that we have, manage the resources that we have. So no, I wouldn't, if we are making more layoffs, no, I wouldn't be coming forward to defund this position.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your honesty, and that's why I asked you. And again, I understand that you feel you need someone else in your office. But just as a taxpayer, I think that we have to have other priorities. I think we have some serious issues with crime in the city. I think we're understaffed in our police department. We heard through the campaign, and I completely agree, and I was a proponent, we have major building and code violations in our neighborhoods, and they're crying for code inspectors. We've heard at subcommittee meetings by you, Mr. Manager, that we haven't invested in our infrastructure. And I think that those are three areas that resources can be better used. It's not personal. I voted to cut it before because I think we had to scale back. It's just a difference of opinion on priorities and knowing limited resources. I have reservations, Mr. Manager, on adding a position, knowing that we're going to be facing layoffs in the future. So I hope you understand. I understand that You're pushing your staff as much as they can, as well as everybody in the city. I'm wondering if you can consider delaying this until we have a better fiscal picture in the next upcoming months. We're going right into, to the budget year. Does that make sense? I'm not making that in the form of a motion, but does it make more sense to hold off, knowing we're going right into the budget, and maybe we have a clearer picture as to where we are financially? I'm not optimistic because the message has been clear from Beacon Hill, but that was, is that something that you could?
Is it a form of a question to me?
Yes, please.
Counselor? No, I think it's crucial that we, as I've indicated, I think it's crucial that if we're going to really realize savings, we have to have the proper staffing in place, management capacity in place. I think we just had the police superintendent here talking about the millions of dollars that the civilian staff of the police department has brought in that have allowed the police officers that we have to remain in place. It's that type of capacity that we need citywide. And so I think, there are clear examples where we can utilize management capacity to produce savings and to produce responsiveness that makes us more effective, more efficient, and will produce revenue for us. And frankly, I think it's, you reach a point where you're being penny wise and pound foolish. And I think that's the situation I find myself in right now, that we're not able to really realize a full, our full capacity because we don't have that staffing in place to be able to do what needs to be done to stretch the dollars of the city's taxpayers.
Well, thank you, Ms. Mayor. I appreciate that. My point is, I think we need more cops in the street. We need more code inspectors in the neighborhoods, and I understand you feel you need another, you need an administrator in your office. So, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Broderick, then Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support this. Obviously, I did not support the vote to cut the funding originally, and for many of the same reasons, I would vote to restore this, or vote to restore the $45,000. I think at this time it's critical for a number of reasons. As mentioned, in terms of just the savings that we should realize, Mr. Manager, from this position as the former assistant to the city manager, was working on the energy procurement contracts and also the performance measurement of the employees, which we're now looking at the city stat performance model. But essentially all this has come to a standstill because we don't have the proper staffing to help coordinate it. And if we don't, so it's sometimes you have to spend money to save money or make money, and I think this is a clear case of that. If we can't properly track our employees and the performance, and we expect to become more efficient and do more with less, I don't think that's a reasonable. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we can do that. And also was touched upon how we're looking at probably some cuts in a very difficult economic or fiscal year coming up. And I think that's another reason why we need to give you the support to be able to help handle some of these other tasks that are taking your time away from what I think is the most critical, which is the financing in the operation of the city, and helping put together for the next few months. I know you will be working with your team to craft a document for us that there's going to be a balanced budget that will make sense and be in the best form that you can put together. And I think that we have to free up some of your time. We don't need you responding to emails on eGov and trying to coordinate and track how many inspections were done. Whose department should this call be sent to as calls are coming into the city manager's office? We all get these calls. We all have people stop us, and I appreciate the fact that you respond to emails and you respond to citizens very timely, from what I hear, and I think we all appreciate that. The fact of the matter is that I think your time would be better spent in managing the larger issues, which is going to be the finances, which is going to be the restructuring, of the city government administration and departments to try and be more efficient, save the taxpayers money, and also in terms of being more efficient within the departments, how they're going to be run, how they're going to be measured, and what performance expectations that the city's going to have of them, because that's the way we're going to save money. I think that's the future of city government is going to be able to track it and perform better and not just add bodies. I'm sure there are situations where we need to add bodies, but if we're adding bodies to a problem without a clear, a clear-cut plan as to how those bodies are best used, then we may be wasting money. And I think none of us sitting here want to waste taxpayers' money, and I think we need to become more efficient, and this is the first step in it, and hopefully you bring forward a plan to us regarding the city stat program, and I look forward to seeing other ways that we can save money. And that's what it's all about now, and I'm going to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brother. Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support it too. I think the positions here make a lot of sense. Again, I had voted to keep the funding initially, but I think and the city manager kind of took the words out of my mouth. We had a living, breathing example of the result of management capacity with Chief LaValle. If we didn't have the civilian staff, we would have lost at least a dozen officers this year. But through his efforts, we were able to get grant funding and keep those officers on the street. I think, whether it's eGov or 311 or CityStat, any type of a program like that would potentially help us deploy our inspection personnel better, needs to be developed and managed. And since the city manager lost the assistant, all those efforts have stalled. And if we're going to make progress, I think it makes sense to have a position like this. And I think the clerical position is needed too. I've called the city manager's office, just calling the main number, and had the city manager answer the phone. City manager's office. Said, Bernie Lynch there? Yeah, you got him. I mean, with all due respect, I appreciate your accessibility to the public, but that's not the best use of your time. So, and that's happened. At least on one occasion, and perhaps more than one. So I think, it was a mistake to eliminate this in the first place, and I'm glad it appears to be support for this now.
Thank you. What's the wish of the council? Motion approved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
No.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
8 yeas, 1 nay.
Last item under the city manager's portion of the agenda, in city council ordinance, an ordinance amending code of the city of Lowell, Massachusetts with respect to chapter 290 thereof entitled zoning by extending existing TSF zoning district to include 160.1 Swan Street in Lowell. This needs to be referred to the planning board by Councilor Mendoza, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Any discussion? All those in favor? Discussion. Councilor Martin.
I think when this comes back, potentially it's a public hearing, so maybe we can't say too much, but I would be interested to hear the view of DPD. This would be a high-rise commercial district being rezoned to, I think, traditional single-family. So there's not that much land zoned in the city for this district, and so whether that ultimately, again, it's going to be a commercial district abutting up against a residential zone. We might have similar issues like we had earlier tonight. So I think it's important to get the DPD's input on this prior to the public hearing.
Good point. Thank you. Any further discussion on referring it to the planning board? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Under claims, we have one claim for property damage referred to Law Department by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Mendoza. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Pole location, National Grid, one pole location, Dutton Street. We also have a conduit location, National Grid, approximately 36 feet on Charles Street. Schedule both of these for public hearing for February 2nd by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Dakota. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. We're now into the motion section of the agenda. The first motion by Councilor Elliott. Motion, City Council requests the city manager work with representatives from UMass Lowell to ensure that startup companies researching at university locate their businesses in Lowell. Motion second by Councilor Martin. Councilor
The
Elliott.
motion essentially speaks for itself, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I am aware of, there's a company that did research, and then they moved their manufacturing plant or part of their operation to the city of New Bedford. So I just want to know if there's some way that, maybe we can contact the university and have them give DPD a list or vice versa. Just open the lines of communication. If there is a startup company and they've done research, maybe we can have them take a look. Maybe it's the Lowell plan or a Chamber of Commerce. I don't know, but I just thought I'd file a motion to see if there's some way we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a good motion. You and I and Councilman Donson was at the Pawtuckaville meeting a couple of weeks ago when the representative from UMass Lowell gave a tremendous presentation. And this modern technology center will be 80,000 square feet, built on Plymouth Street, I believe. And it's going to have a nice view of the river, but it's going to create jobs, high-tech jobs. And this is a feather in the hat of UMass Lowell and Chancellor Meehan. And this is a good motion. We should work and do everything we can, Mr. Manager, to assist them to make sure that this is a great, great project.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Rita Mercier.
Do we not have a subcommittee on this venture here? We could refer it to that subcommittee.
It's up to the maker of the motion. Would you?
No objection, Mayor.
No objection. Refer it to the Collegiate Partnership Subcommittee.
Could I offer just a comment?
Sure. If
we got that message back to Chancellor Meehan that the subcommittee would be willing and able to convene a meeting if they needed us.
Yes.
But I wouldn't want to try to interfere or make it the appearance that we're trying to interfere with them.
No, but this is the venue that it could go through that collegiate subcommittee. Wouldn't you think? I'm not saying that we have to do that right now, but we could.
It could certainly end up there.
Offer the lines of communication open to Chancellor Meehan through this subcommittee.
Correct. Manager Lynch?
If I may, I think it is it's a good motion, and we do quite a bit of this already, but I think it's still a worthy motion to put out there to sort of hammer home the point that we do try to work with the university on the research that's done and businesses that are created as a result of that. Examples of that certainly abound down at the near the East Campus, the new Metabolics company that relocated here from Cambridge because of the research being done here was in large part due to the work that clearly the university was doing, but also our own economic development people. So I'd be interested perhaps in getting a report from Teresa Park and then bringing that back to the council, and that could be, if need be, it could be referred to the collegiate subcommittee or the economic development subcommittee, or a combination of both.
Yes.
I think that's a great idea.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay, fine. As long as the maker of the motion's okay. Great. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Next motion by Councilor Elliott. City Council requests the city manager determine the feasibility of installing lights at the city dog park. Seconded by Councilor Dakota.
Thank you, Mayor. On my way to take my daughter to basketball every other night, I go by the dog park, and the good news is people are using the dog park. Unfortunately, it's dark. It gets dark early in the night, so people are using them, but literally turning their cars on and they're shining light in the dog park. So if we could look into the feasibility on maybe installing just a light so people can see each other on the boulevard, I think they'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Here, Councilor Mendonça.
Just a thought that to add to this is, in researching this, if we could find any way to do it in a renewable energy way, that maybe there's some solar panels or something so that we don't have to tie into the electric grid and pay for having the place lit. At least it'll be lit as long as there's a charge in the cells. So I encourage that be done.
Dog treadmill.
Dog treadmill.
Let the dog generate their own light.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Next motion by Council Martin. City Council requests the city manager to seek additional funding for the first-time home buyer and 2 for Lowell programs and report back to City Council. Seconded by Council Mercia. Council Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I'm looking for, I filed a similar motion last year. These programs ran out of funding around this time, maybe a little bit later, and I understand they're at or near running out again. DPD was able to identify some home funds to reprogram some money. So I'm not looking for any new, taxpayer money, general fund money, but simply home money that's made available through the federal government. And I think as part of this, the stories I continue to hear from folks who work in these agencies and at Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership is that these programs are still remarkably successful. The last report I had, we had 1 foreclosure, in hundreds and hundreds of loans. So, this is a programs that work. People that go through the education programs that the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership offers clearly benefit. They don't get in over their heads, at least not to date. And so I think it's a remarkable success story. And to the extent we do have foreclosed properties in the city, there are opportunities for people who are, just getting into the housing market. And so if we can help, I think we should do everything we can, as we have been doing. So to see if there's funding available and just to see if we're still on track with, how we're doing with foreclosed properties, because the anecdotal reports I'm hearing, we have very few. And so I'd like to just confirm that's still the case.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. Thank you. Next motion by Councilor Dakota. City Council requests the city manager and the DPD report on programs, funds available for struggling businesses, and report on any indicators from the new marketing strategies.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to start off by saying, compared to many communities, I think Lowell's doing very well with its business development, particularly in downtown, but probably other areas. But the cracks of the recession are starting to show. There have been a few small businesses that have closed, and I think that potentially it costs less to help get them through a hump than to let them close and then try to find new businesses to fill those storefronts. So I would just like to see if there are any Recovery Act monies available or some other potential funding available in case there was a need. And secondly, I know we've invested a lot of money in a new marketing strategy and new branding, and I'd like to see a report on the results of that, and also potentially a future schedule so that we can maybe coordinate or leverage with some of the other marketing efforts with businesses and the university. It's going to have. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
City Manager Lynch?
Yeah, if I could, what we'll probably do is look at this as 2 separate reports, one from Economic Development, one from the Cultural Affairs and Special Events Office, which is managing the marketing for us. We can do that.
Thank you. We also have the Marketing Subcommittee, which I believe Councilor Dakota is chairing. Councilor Broderick on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excellent motion. I actually made a note last week to file a similar one on the marketing, but ran out of time last week. If you could include in that report, I know I was the chair of the marketing subcommittee, and when they made the presentation and we changed things up and hired the new company, there was talk that in addition to what we could purchase for advertising, that there was going to be some marketing done in terms of stories and things that, I don't want to say free, but, some additional things that the city didn't have the manpower and the resources and the connections to get. So if we could include that as in terms of not only what we've bought and spent and where we've been and been seen, but also what else are we getting these additional not really perks, but these additional things that were hopefully brought to the table by hiring this new firm. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Councilor Murphy, motion. City Council requests the city manager and the DPD. Excuse me. Councilor Murphy, City Council requests the city manager explore establishing neighborhood venture fund and widen outreach efforts for existing loan programs. Second by Councilor Martin. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that the timing of this motion is probably appropriate for tonight as we, discuss the Walgreens proposal and what kind of development that we want to encourage in this city. But also as we review in our packets, there was, a report done by the company Good and Clancy, which talked about what has arisen out of the charrette process, the public input meetings that the city has held over the last year in many of the different neighborhoods. And, the planning department with the Lowell Development and Financial Corporation and local banks has really done quite a bit of work to encourage local businesses downtown with the Downtown Venture Fund, and been able to support a lot of businesses with programs like the Best Retail Practices program, facade improvement program, in these types of things. But I think a significant amount has gone to strictly the downtown, and probably not enough to more of the areas within the renewal community to have achieve a more balanced approach to development. I think that if it's true, that the bringing more people, more residents downtown was in fact a more kind of sustainable way of developing, that you have the ability to live, work, learn, and play all within walking distance of each other, then it's also true that if you that it's a more sustainable way of living if you bring those work opportunities to where people are living right now. And I think this, really fits in with the planning department's emphasis on smart growth, on new urbanism, and I think that if we can, obviously the first part of it, developing a neighborhoods venture fund is going to be a bit difficult in these times, especially with the prior motions, but certainly the second part of it, really extending more outreach into the neighborhoods so that more potential business owners have the opportunity to really partake in the programs that are available now. And I think that's really doable in the near term. So those are really the two issues: to encourage more development in the neighborhoods themselves, development that is not only neighborhood centered but neighborhood driven. I think that's an important part of it. A lot of the issues that came up during that, through that report were raised during the public process, so that you have a more, really a smarter approach to development that respects what the neighborhoods themselves want.
Thank you. Manager Lynch?
Well, if I could, and we could certainly put a report like this together, and I do think that a report and an action plan to look at this. I think, as Councilor Murphy points out, the venture fund is a difficult one right now because venture fund, the LDFC venture fund, is largely capitalized by the private banks. The city has some involvement there, but it's largely dependent upon private investment to make that happen as a pool basis. But certainly, I think that there's some merit to this, and certainly are looking to give the council a report on how we're doing the outreach and ways we can improve upon that. Certainly, one of the concerns I think we have to be careful of is the downtown venture fund is very much geared towards really bringing new types of small businesses in, and clearly we want to be able to target where neighborhood venture fund money goes. Obviously, we wouldn't want to be providing funding and financing for a large chain, or we wouldn't want to necessarily have the venture fund be funding development in a large commercial area that really there aren't any specific needs. We want to focus in on the neighborhoods that are experiencing some level of disinvestment, or where we want to target some resources. So I think we have a lot of issues we need to balance out there, but we'll take a crack at that and then bring it back to the council and let the council chew that over and see if it addresses the concerns that the council has. I think it's certainly a worthy endeavor.
Thank you, Manager Lynch. Any further discussion of the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. The last motion of the evening, which I had filed, actually has already been addressed by Council Caulfield's original motion, which he had filed back in December, and there was a report in the packet, so I'll withdraw that motion. Mr. Clerk.
Good, Council, just to notify the council, the Finance Subcommittee, which was originally scheduled for this evening at 5:30, has been rescheduled to next Tuesday at 5:30 as a result of not being posted on the city's website, city calendar, and certain individuals didn't receive notice. So in consultation with the chairman of the committee, we decided to properly notify all parties and reschedule the meeting for next week. So I apologize for any inconvenience it may have caused anyone.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I know that we did communicate last week via email, and it was posted in the City Hall, but rather than, typically it's always posted on the website, so rather than, just eliminate confusion, we will go next week to take up the property valuation methodology and any other issues, so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mercia?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very excited to finally say that the Lowell Senior Citizen Council on Aging bus has arrived, and they're going to have a ribbon-cutting ceremony this Thursday here, January 21st at 10 o'clock in the morning. So everybody is welcome, and everybody, took it on faith that we'd be able to raise our portion of the money, and we did, and we had a committee, and we know that we installed seat belts in the bus, and we put the logo on the bus, and it was just a large effort by so many people. When we talk about partnership through the Congressman Marty Meehan, and then our Congresswoman Nikki Songus, and generous people that came forward and gave large sums of money, and then small fundraisers that our seniors gave dollars and 50 cents and everything else, and it all added up. This is a culmination of a great effort by so many people in this city, and so the day has arrived, and that'll be Thursday, and everybody's invited, and we're just so blessed to have it. Thank you.
Congratulations. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank you and through you to the clerk and whoever provided us with the new Robert's Rules of Order, and I see that you're sticking to the rules, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, in that spirit, if you just let me request that we look at the document provided by the city manager in our packets this evening, dealing with the summary of the public outreach project for the 4 neighborhoods adjacent to the Hamilton Canal, and request that the chairman of the neighborhood subcommittee schedule a subcommittee meeting for either February 2nd or February 9th, if we could do that. That would be great. Thank you. Any further business to come before the council? Motion to adjourn?
I kind of rely on M. Brendan Fleming for my ethics
Robert's rules
interpretation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. It's a vote. Thank you.